Chapter 588. Before the monument in the immortal martial realm, 12 silhouettes were quietly comprehending the energy within. These 12 were the 8 era-suppressing geniuses: Gu Lufeng Ji Feishue from the Battle Sword Sect, Di Shi from the Supreme Clan, Li Tian from the Heaven Punisher Clan, Dongyue Hanjiang from the Eastern Mountain Country, Qi Lian from the Blood Devil Palace, Qi Lian from the Qi Clan of the Western Region, Holy Maiden Fan Miaoyu from the Forgotten Immortal Tower, and Hua Taishu from the Taishu Sect. Among them, Fan Miaoyu was the only female among the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. She had the same identity as Qi Lian. She was the Holy Maiden of the Tianfan sect, and also a disciple of the Forgotten Immortal Tower. In the Royal Sacred Region, many geniuses from the aristocratic clans would send their disciples to the 9 great sects, allowing them to have a better cultivation platform. This wasn't strange at all. Not only that, if these geniuses reached a higher level in the future, the powers they were in would be more than happy to send them there. If they stayed in the sect and restricted the growth of others, that would simply be a short-sighted and selfish action. Some people were destined not to stay in the sect forever. The sect would only grant them their wish, allowing them to walk towards a more glorious stage. Among the 8, Gu Liufeng's fame was the highest, Fan Miaoyu's cultivation was the highest, Hua Taishu from the Taishu sect was the latest to rise to fame, and was the most mysterious. As to why the cultivation bases of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses were all at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper or above, it was because when their cultivation bases were weak, their battle achievements wouldn't attract too much attention. Hence, only after they reached the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper would their glorious battle achievements be known to the world. Other than these 8, the other 4 out of the 12 were Qin Wentian from the Battle Sword Sect, Lu Bingyu from the Battle Sword Sect, Nangong Shuang from the Nangong Aristocrat Clan, and Si Ling from the Violet Thunder Sect. Si Ling was also a descendant of the Si Clan from the Grand Shang Empire. Of these 12, 3 were from the Battle Sword Sect: Ji Feishue, Lu Bingyu, and Qin Wentian. This also caused many to sigh in admiration. The individual combat prowess of the Battle Sword Sect was as tyrannical as ever. Lu Bingyu had always kept a low profile and rarely appeared in public. But because she was the doted personal disciple of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness, her reputation was known by many. However, this Qin Wentian was a complete dark horse. Even when Di Shi personally acted, he still failed to blast him out. The 12 of them were all quietly comprehending. Clearly, they were all more cautious now, and at the same time, they were silently increasing their strength. This time around, Qin Wentian chose the stone monument Di Shi was cultivating on not long ago. In this stone monument, resplendent astral light could be seen flickering in the air. A silhouette stood proudly in the air. This silhouette was actually able to split into 1,000,000 copies in an instant, launching attacks at the same time, causing the hearts of those who saw it to tremble. This attack was none other than the innate technique Di Shi used to injure Qin Wentian. However, Di Shi's comprehension was only at the tip of the iceberg. The millions of copies of this silhouette in the air were extremely tyrannical and terrifying. In that instant, it felt as though the heavens and earth were about to collapse. Qin Wentian's deep eyes gleamed with excitement as he stared at the sky. Resplendent and resplendent. It was as though a starry sky could be seen in his eyes. If the innate technique of this stone monument was condensed into 1,000,000 copies and blasted out at the same time, even the constellations in the heavens and earth would be plucked from the sky. The might of this attack could truly shake the heavens and earth. How could Qin Wentian not be excited? This made him even more certain that his choice wasn't wrong. Hence, he steeled his heart and steadied his cultivation method, immersing himself in the comprehension of this stone monument. On the floating bridge, an expression of astonishment appeared on Ouyang Quangxing's face when he heard Yi Lingshuang's words. He stared at Yi Lingshuang as he pointed to a silhouette in front of a stone monument. "You said that person is Hua Taishu?" "Yes, Hua Taishu from the Taishu sect." There were 2 battles that made him famous. The first was when he slew a fearsome expert with a high cultivation base, and the second battle was when he fought against one of the era-suppressing geniuses, Dongyue Hanjiang. He wasn't at a disadvantage at all, causing his fame to soar as he became the 8th era-suppressing genius. Yi Lingshuang nodded. Ouyang Quangxing was still dumbfounded. In truth, Hua Taishu was still the idol of Ouyang Guangxing when he was younger, a character he wanted to surpass. He had naturally seen Hua Taishu before, but the heroic Hua Taishu from back then had changed. Regardless of his countenance or demeanor, he gave off an unfathomable feeling. But when he looked closely, Ouyang Guangxing could still recognize him. It's true. Ouyang Guangxing was stunned. Before this, although he had cast a glance at Hua Taishu, because Hua Taishu's aura had changed, it was easy to overlook him when compared to the other 7. Hence, he didn't pay too much attention to Hua Taishu. Hence, he didn't recognize him. At this moment, he couldn't help but feel shocked in his heart. The most dazzling young genius of Grand Xia, Hua Taishu, had actually become so dazzling after coming to the royal sacred region. He was somewhat similar to Qin Wentian. After the battle in the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian's name would surely shake the entire royal sacred region. Are you acquainted with him? Yi Lingshuang stared at Ouyang Guangxing with a puzzled expression. This Hua Taishu is extremely mysterious. The first time I heard of him, I heard that he was accepted as a personal disciple by the sect leader of the Great Void sect. I'm acquainted with him. He was the idol of my youth. Back then, he was the top ranker on the heavenly fate rankings of Grand Xia. After that, Wentian also achieved the same level of success as him. Not only that, there's a grudge between Wentian and Hua Taishu. Ouyang Guangxing's words caused Yi Lingshuang to be speechless. She didn't expect that there would be such a history between them. Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing should have known each other for a very long time. No wonder their relationship was so good. In that case, Wentian should be able to recognize him as well. Yi Lingshuang stated in a low voice. Qin Wentian should have heard of the names of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses before. Now that he saw Hua Taishu in person, he should be able to recognize him. That's for sure. This fellow is as calm as Hua Taishu. It's like they don't know each other. Ouyang Guangxing shook his head with a bitter smile. So what if he can't control his emotions? Don't tell me he would directly engage in a battle? Yi Lingshuang laughed. Let's wait and see. Maybe they will use the stone monuments to fight against each other later on. Si Ling is going to act against Lu Bingyu. Seems like he's accumulating the number of eliminations. If not, it would be even more difficult for him to advance to the next stone monument. Hence he chose Lu Bingyu. At this moment, Si Ling invaded Lu Bingyu's stone monument. The battle between the two of them was extremely intense. Si Ling cultivated a lightning-type innate technique, causing lightning to dance wildly in the air. However, Lu Bingyu was similarly powerful. Her defense was impenetrable. The two of them were evenly matched, and eventually, Si Ling from the Violet Thunder sect gave up. After a few more days of peace, the participants quietly cultivated. Those on the floating bridges were all very patient, waiting quietly. Although these people were all patiently comprehending the stone monument, there would eventually be an earth-shattering battle. And as expected, on the 5th day, Dongyue Hanjiang made his move against Nangong Shuang. This crown prince of the eastern mountain country, one of the era-suppressing geniuses, relied on his tyrannical attacks to forcefully force the talented Nangong Shuang out of the battle. The stone monument dimmed, and at this moment, there were only 11 participants remaining. The top 10 would soon be revealed. As long as one more person was eliminated, the top 10 would be officially confirmed. Many people clenched their fists tightly. Up till now, none of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses had been defeated. Other than the battle between Di Shi and Qin Wentian, which ended in a draw, they won all their other battles. No one knew if it was because Di Shi was one of the weakest among the 8, or because he chose Qin Wentian as his opponent. The 8 of them should be able to monopolize the top 8, right? Many people silently mused. As they clenched their fists tightly, they couldn't help but feel nervous. As long as one more person was eliminated, the top 10 would be revealed. This person should be either Qin Wentian, Lu Bingyu, or Si Ling. Today, Qin Wentian halted his cultivation in the stone monument he was in. He wanted to exit the stone monument, but he suddenly realized that from the start until now, he had only defeated 2 people. Hence, he could only reach the 3rd row at most. Hence, if he wanted to continue forward, he had to eliminate one more person first. Seems like he had no choice but to take the initiative to fight. As he thought of this, a terrifying light flashed in Qin Wentian's eyes. After which, an invasive light radiated from the stone monument, enveloping the other stone monuments. An instant later, in the stone monument Di Shi was in, his eyes abruptly flashed with a dazzling light. There was actually someone who dared to take the initiative to invade his stone monument. Turning his eyes over, Di Shi saw Qin Wentian, who was bathed in golden astral light. The shadow of the golden-winged great rock enveloped him, and his lofty eyes were currently staring at him. The spectators on the floating bridges were all dumbfounded. Has he gone mad? He's taking the initiative to invade Di Shi's stone monument? Qin Wentian didn't choose Lu Bingyu or Si Ling. He chose Di Shi instead. Qin Wentian's previous battle was precisely against Di Shi. At that time he had just exited the first stone monument, and was suppressed by Di Shi. But because of his advantage in speed, he was undefeatable. But now he took the initiative to invade. Beautifully done, kill him. The light screen in front of Fan Lu had an expression of excitement on its face. Not far away, the countenances of those from the D clan were all extremely grim as they coldly stated, courting death. Finally taking the initiative to invade? Will there be a surprise? Lin Xian's eyes flickered with a faint glow of excitement. As long as Qin Wentian won this battle, it would mean that the top 10 rankings would be decided. Di Shi would be kicked out of the top 10. The meaning behind that would be sufficient to cause the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns of the Royal Sacred Region to tremble. This daddy is actually feeling a little nervous. Ouyang Guangxing stared at the light screen projected by the stone monument as his heart pounded wildly. He understood Qin Wentian. Since this fellow took the initiative to invade, he definitely had the confidence to do so. You are truly courting death. Di Shi stared hatefully at Qin Wentian. He was the first among the 8 era-suppressing geniuses to be challenged. This was an extremely shameful matter. The flickering light in Qin Wentian's eyes continued to flicker. He moved, transforming into a beam of golden light that shot towards Di Shi with the speed of lightning. A raging wind gusted by as Di Shi similarly dashed towards Qin Wentian. Just like that, the two of them rushed towards each other, their eyes flickering with a terrifying sharpness and loftiness. Astral light circulated in Qin Wentian's palms, transforming into resplendent runic lights. After which his palm abruptly shot out, blasting towards Di Shi. Di Shi similarly unleashed an attack, the talon of an incomparably gigantic ferocious bird. Bang! The talon of the gigantic ferocious bird was shattered into pieces by Di Shi's palm imprint. A force so powerful that it could pluck down constellations continued on its way towards Di Shi. Di Shi simultaneously blasted out with both his palms. The gigantic talon of the ferocious bird blasted out unceasingly, causing rumbling sounds to echo unceasingly. The talon was shattered into pieces, and the palm imprint was indomitable. Di Shi's body was forcibly forced backwards by the impact. Fuck! Fatty on the floating bridge grew even more excited. Wasn't this Di Shi so arrogant? In that case he would blast him out. The hearts of the others pounded unceasingly when they saw that golden silhouette diving down. In the first exchange earlier, Qin Wentian had the absolute advantage. Was he truly going to defy the heavens? Chapter 589. Qin Wentian swooped down, golden light illuminating the skies, exuding an unparalleled loftiness. His cold eyes seemed to be able to penetrate through the eyes of others. Di Shi was forced back with a single strike. With a howl of rage, a phenomenon manifested behind him. Numerous ferocious primordial birds appeared behind him, radiating a resplendent light that enveloped Di Shi's body as an even more terrifying baleful aura gushed forth. Upon seeing Qin Wentian's attack once again, Di Shi's body trembled. The resplendent light from the primordial birds exuded an aura of arrogance that could laugh at the 9 heavens. When he launched another attack, the gigantic claws of the primordial birds transformed into the primordial bird itself, lunging towards Qin Wentian with the power to tear the body of a human apart. Di Shi is retaliating. What a powerful attack. This should be an ability he cultivated from the 4th side of the monument. The attacks of the two collided once more, and the scene projected by the monument turned blurry. Bang bang bang. The resplendent astral light in Qin Wentian's palms flowed unceasingly as runic light radiated outwards, illuminating the surroundings. The light radiating from Di Shi's body radiated outwards as his baleful aura soared up into the skies. Numerous star-seizing palms blasted out, clashing against Di Shi's attacks unceasingly. As the two of them clashed, their bodies soared upwards, causing the space around them to shatter unceasingly. The spectators were all dumbfounded, their hearts filled with fascination. Qin Wentian's attacks are actually so powerful, he isn't at a disadvantage when fighting against Di Shi. Many people sighed in their hearts. Di Shi roared in rage when he saw the situation. Instantly, an even more resplendent light radiated from him, filling the entire space with his silhouette. The terrifying primordial birds all stared at Qin Wentian, terrifying to the extreme. Die! Di Shi roared in rage, and in that instant, an overwhelming barrage of attacks blasted downwards. Busy. Astral light erupted forth. Qin Wentian's body was about to transform into 1,000,000 different incarnations of Qin Wentian. The palms of these incarnations all shone with resplendent light as runic light erupted forth, transforming into numerous star-seizing palms that blasted out in the direction of Di Shi. At this moment, the crowd only felt that the two of them had 3 heads and 6 arms. Di Shi's radiance was stronger because he had the shadow of the ferocious bird. But in reality, Qin Wentian's silhouettes were more numerous. Waves of destruction ravaged the scene projected by the monument. The images flickered blurry, as though they were on the verge of collapse. The spectators could faintly see Di Shi's body being forced backwards, after which, Qin Wentian's speed increased even more. The golden rock in his form transformed into a golden beam of light, and after that, he unleashed numerous star-seizing palm imprints that shook the heavens and earth, wanting to destroy everything. The hearts of the spectators pounded unceasingly. Everyone on the floating bridges stared fixedly at the blurry scene before them as great waves of shock rose up in their hearts. That young man who had always been in a defensive stance had finally bared his fangs. Originally, Qin Wentian could have chosen to remain in a defensive stance and not fight. If that was the case, as long as one of the participants was eliminated, he would be able to enter the top 10 of the immortal martial realm. However, he didn't choose to do so. Instead, he took the initiative to launch an attack against Di Shi. His self-confidence caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. The blurry screen of light abruptly shattered as the hearts of the spectators pounded violently, after which, they saw Di Shi's body being forced back to the first row of monuments as he coughed out a mouthful of fresh blood. Right now, Di Shi's crooked back was completely different from the lofty aura he exuded earlier. It was as though in that instant, the halo of light enveloping him had been shattered by the cruelest of methods. How cruel! How hard it was for the spectators to accept. However, this was the truth, transforming into waves of gigantic waves that blasted against the hearts of the spectators. One of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, Di Shi, was defeated. Although this wasn't a battle of true strength, the immortal martial realm was extremely fair. Under the same conditions, Di Shi was defeated by Qin Wentian. This meant that although Qin Wentian's combat prowess was inferior to Di Shi's, his potential was still higher than Di Shi's. This was a battle where an era-suppressing genius fell. This time around, Di Shi's name would no longer be in the top 10 rankings of the immortal martial realm. The meaning behind this battle was extraordinary. The spectators were all thinking that although Di Shi was defeated by Qin Wentian, he should still be stronger compared to Lu Bingyu and Si Ling. Sadly, that lofty young man had trampled on him, an era-suppressing genius, to rise up. With just this battle, Qin Wentian's fame would skyrocket. Countless gazes landed on Qin Wentian. At this instant, the halo of light radiating from Qin Wentian was even more dazzling compared to the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. It was as though he wanted to use this battle to announce that he had replaced Di Shi, stepping into the ranks of era-suppressing geniuses. The spectators couldn't help but recall the conflict between Qin Wentian and Di Shi. It was rumored that Di was arrogant and despotic, insulting Qin Wentian's friends, and even lusting after the holy maiden of the medicine sovereign valley. Qin Wentian wanted to kill Di, but was stopped by Di Shi. Not only that, the domineering Di Shi fought a great battle, wanting to kill Qin Wentian and his friends cleanly. At that time, Disher was unexcelled in the world. Only when Ji Feishue appeared did he manage to obstruct him. After which, Qin Wentian used his extreme determination and guts to kill Diyu in front of Disher before leaving. In that battle, although Qin Wentian's actions caused everyone to admire his courage, he still didn't have the strength to face Disher directly. In the eyes of the spectators, he and Disher weren't on the same level. Hence, they all believed that when Disher invaded Qin Wentian's stone monument, it would be Qin Wentian's final battle in the immortal martial realm. Sadly, Disher didn't manage to expel Qin Wentian. On the contrary, Qin Wentian managed to expel him. Such a counterattack, if one were to think back on it in detail, was undoubtedly a hot-blooded and inspiring story. Qin Wentian completed his transformation in the immortal martial realm, trampling Disher beneath his feet. Right now, who would still dare to underestimate this low-profile young man from the Battle Sword sect? He only used a single invasion to shatter all doubts, telling everyone that the prologue of his legend had only just begun. Beautifully done. Fatty on the floating bridge roared in excitement. The fats on his face were all flushed red from his agitation. Chu Meng and Ouyang Guangxing also roared in a low voice. Although they felt that no matter how hard they tried, the distance between them and Qin Wentian was still widening, they were still happy for him. The young man who once held Mo Qingqing's hand on the Heavenly Fate ranking platform, and announced to the entire world, had finally made his voice heard in the royal sacred region. They believed that this battle had only just begun. Even for the cold Yin Mingi, at this moment, a radiant light flickered in her eyes. Qin Wentian had finally stepped onto the path of ascension. Princess Jiaoyang, who was not far away, heaved a sigh of relief. Since even Disher was defeated by Qin Wentian, her defeat could also be accepted. It was just that her luck was bad, choosing to fight against him too early. Lin Xian's eyes were still filled with a faint smile as her lips curled up in an arc. Her beauty was incomparably beautiful. As for those from the D clan, their countenances were all ashen. Disher was defeated, ranked outside the top 10 of the immortal martial realm. After Qin Wentian defeated Disher, he didn't proceed to the fourth row of monuments. Right now, there were only 10 participants remaining. Defeating Disher would only be sufficient for him to enter the fourth row, but this clearly wasn't his limit. In order to avoid an even more difficult battle, he might as well eliminate one more participant. When Si Ling saw Qin Wentian invading his monument, his countenance turned extremely unsightly. Lightning crackled around him as he stared at the lofty eyes of Qin Wentian. It was as though he could see an intense ambition in them. Busy. A raging wind gusted as golden light flashed. Qin Wentian dashed toward Si Ling with a speed as quick as lightning. Si Ling's speed obviously couldn't compare to Qin Wentian's. It was impossible for him to evade, he could only face it head-on. Hence, the spectators only saw numerous palm imprints that could pluck down constellations slamming downwards, directly eliminating Si Ling from the competition. If one were to ask the spectators to evaluate this battle, there would only be 2 words that would be the most appropriate. Tyrannical slaughter. Si Ling was blasted back to the first row as he coughed out fresh blood. He stared at Qin Wentian with an extremely unsightly countenance. He would never have guessed that the reason why Qin Wentian invaded his monument was because he wanted to eliminate one more participant. If he knew the reason, he would definitely be so angered that he would cough out a few more mouthfuls of blood. There's already 9 participants. Si Ling should be ranked number 10 in the immortal martial realm, but in truth his strength should be inferior to Disher. Someone commented. However, this Qin Wentian is truly a freak. He clearly could have easily swept Si Ling into the top 10, yet he chose Disher instead. This isn't something that can be described with the word confidence, it's simply arrogance. Others have the qualifications to be arrogant. If you can defeat Disher, you can be as arrogant as well. Someone at the side replied, his words causing the spectators to nod their heads in agreement. Evidently, ever since the battle where Qin Wentian defeated Disher, his status had already changed. Everyone understood that his rise was unstoppable. Only now did Qin Wentian walk towards the fourth row of monuments. He quietly sensed the energy emanating from the unoccupied monuments, and an instant later, he sensed a different aura from one of the monuments. Faintly, it caused a portion of the incantation in his sea of consciousness to glow with a resplendent light, causing a strange light to flash in Qin Wentian's eyes. That unknown incantation I obtained during the pagoda battle earlier was able to affect the energy within my body, causing me to feel extremely unbearable. Could it be that it has something to do with this monument? Qin Wentian mused. This is it. Qin Wentian walked to the front of the monument. He believed in his own intuition. Maybe, the incantation he learned earlier was all for this moment. If he couldn't reach this step, that incantation would be equivalent to a waste. Walking to the front of the monument, Qin Wentian sent his will into it. The monument glowed with a resplendent light as his will fused with it. This time around, what appeared before Qin Wentian was a giant from the primordial era, capable of suppressing the heavens and earth. In the air, gigantic ancient characters directly pierced into Qin Wentian's sea of consciousness, faintly resonating with the incantation in his sea of consciousness. In an instant, rows of gigantic characters floated before his eyes as the incantation grew clearer and clearer. Fiend God Heavenly Suppression Art. 5 gigantic characters appeared in his sea of consciousness, causing Qin Wentian's heart to pound violently. The Fiend God Heavenly Suppression Art was yet another immortal level art. This should be the greatest reward he obtained in the immortal martial realm. The rumors about the immortal martial realm had already become clearer. Since there were immortal level arts here, there was no doubt that the master of the immortal martial realm was an immortal. Not only that, there was a high possibility that the master of the immortal martial realm wasn't an ordinary immortal. This point should be known by those who obtain the top few rankings in the immortal martial realm, or the upper echelons of the various sects and clans. Chapter 590. The immortal martial realm was known as the burial ground for heaven's chosen, but there were still countless experts rushing over. Regardless of disciples from the 9 great sects, princes and princesses of ancient countries, or even saint children and holy maidens from the great sects, all of them were here to participate in this banquet. It was unknown how many people died in the immortal martial realm, but the moment they arrived before the stone monuments, they would start to reap the rewards. Each and every stone monument contained a type of energy within it. If there was someone like him who obtained the first rank in the test of the pagoda and obtained the incantation, they might even have a chance to find a cultivation art that was compatible with them. Qin Wentian understood that if he didn't have the incantation in his mind, this stone monument would be the same as the previous ones, a type of innate technique. He also understood that if he didn't manage to reach the 4th row of monuments, the incantation would be wasted. Advancing step by step, only those who obtained the recognition of the immortal martial realm would have a chance to obtain an immortal art. At this moment, Qin Wentian also understood that in the vast royal sacred region, there were many who had cultivated immortal arts before. For those dazzling characters of the immortal martial realm, there would definitely be a few who obtained an immortal art. But for such matters, they would only tell the people closest to them and wouldn't leak it out. Immortal arts, who wouldn't covet them? Even if they obtained it, they couldn't reveal it. It was the same as if they didn't obtain it. Hence, the fact that the master of the immortal martial realm was an immortal was a rumor, and not something everyone knew. Because those who knew kept their mouths shut while those who didn't know could only speculate. I wonder if Dishur obtained an immortal art or not. Qin Wentian mused. He didn't know if Dishur obtained an incantation like him or not. Even if he did, he couldn't be sure which row the incantation would be able to resonate with Dishur. If Dishur had the incantation but didn't obtain an immortal art, his hatred for him would definitely be even deeper. The Fiend God Heavenly Suppression Art, suppressing the heavens and earth, becoming an immortal with a single thought, becoming a devil with a single thought. Just as well in the future, Ditian and I will each cultivate a set of immortal arts. Ditian will still focus on cultivating the Great Dream Immortal Art, while I will cultivate the Fiend God Heavenly Suppression Art. The Fiend God Heavenly Suppression Art contains the power of body refinement, and cannot be shared. Hence, it is more suitable for my true body to cultivate it. As long as Ditian cultivates the Great Dream Immortal Art, I will be able to use it as well. Qin Wentian thought in his heart, feeling extremely excited. Now, in the truest sense, he already had 4 types of immortal arts. Most likely, there weren't many people in the entire absolute Monarch sanctuary who could do the same as him. Out of these 4 sets of immortal arts, one was an immortal type art, the Great Nirvana immortal art. It could allow one to create another body with heaven-defying might. As for the other 2, they were the Great Dream immortal art and the Fiend God heavenly suppression art. Both had to be slowly cultivated, and the last one was an attack-type immortal art, the immortal vanquishing swordplay art. Right now he basically didn't dare to use this. The might of an attack-type immortal art was simply too terrifying. He wouldn't be able to bear the burden of using it. However, as he grew stronger in the future, he would be able to unleash the might of the immortal vanquishing swordplay sooner or later. This Fiend God heavenly suppression art contains an innate technique. If I don't have the incantation in my mind, what would appear before my eyes would only be this innate technique. But even so, it would still be extremely powerful. Qin Wentian mused as he started his cultivation. It was clearly impossible for him to cultivate the Fiend God heavenly suppression art in the immortal martial realm. Unless one day he broke through to the legendary immortal realm, only then would he be considered to have succeeded in cultivating this art. Right now he could at most only be at the entry level. However, this didn't affect Qin Wentian's decision to cultivate the innate techniques first so that he could deal with the battles in the immortal martial realm. Fan Miaoyu is going to act against Lu Bingyu. At this moment, the people on the floating bridge who had been silent for so long were once again in an uproar. Fan Miaoyu's original cultivation base was at the 9th level of Heavenly Dipper. In the Royal Sacred Region, she was an unrivaled existence at the Heavenly Dipper realm. If one were to say that there was a limit to the Heavenly Dipper realm, Fan Miaoyu belonged to that limit. In fact, there were even people who said that Fan Miaoyu might even be able to defeat Celestial Phenomenon Ascendants. The 8 era-suppressing geniuses could easily jump levels to fight against Celestial Phenomenon Ascendants. But for Heavenly Dipper sovereigns, this wasn't something that could be described with the words jumping levels. It was a qualitative change. Hence, no matter how outstanding a genius was, they couldn't guarantee that they would be able to step over this chasm. Lu Bingyu's journey in the immortal martial realm is about to end. Many people mused in their hearts. Although Lu Bingyu's strength caused many to be pleasantly surprised, the fact that she was ranked number 9 in the immortal martial realm should be worthy of her strength. After all, even Di Shi was eliminated in advance. Fan Miaoyu had already walked to the 5th row of monuments. She had cultivated 5 different types of innate techniques, while Lu Bingyu was on the 4th row, cultivating 4 different types of innate techniques. The 2 of them battled against each other, but there wasn't any sign of them slaughtering each other. On the contrary, if one were to talk about a single type of innate technique, Lu Bingyu didn't seem to be any weaker compared to Fan Miaoyu. This indicated that Lu Bingyu's comprehension ability wasn't inferior to hers. After all, using the power of the monuments to battle, everyone's starting point was the same. They could only borrow the energy within the monuments, and since their cultivation bases were the same, their innate techniques could only be used to comprehend the innate techniques within the monuments. Ultimately, because Lu Bingyu lacked combat experience and the usage of her innate techniques, she was still defeated not long after. But even so, her potential was clear for all to see. However, when the spectators saw such a battle, a strange feeling appeared in their hearts. Not long ago, Lu Bingyu and Si Ling had no way to defeat each other. Yet Si Ling was slaughtered by Qin Wentian. This meant that if Qin Wentian fought against Lu Bingyu, it would be a one-sided slaughter. However, Fan Miaoyu didn't manage to do so. In that case, what did this mean? As they thought of this, the hearts of the spectators pounded. Fan Miaoyu chose Lu Bingyu as her opponent. Was she trying to probe Qin Wentian's strength? Many people stared at the silhouette of a young man on the 4th row. That fellow who defeated Di Shi, it seemed like he wanted to enter the top 5 or even higher. This time around, a dark horse had appeared. There are only 8 people left. Di Shi is ranked 11th, Si Ling is 10th and Lu Bingyu is 9th. Someone stated in a low voice, as though this was nonsense. But when they thought of the hidden meaning behind it, the hearts of many involuntarily pounded. 8 people, 8 era-suppressing geniuses. What was this hinting at? After Fan Miaoyu defeated Lu Bingyu, the area before the stone monument was silent for a long period of time. The remaining 8 people were all quietly comprehending their insights. Over 10 days later, Qin Wentian stepped towards the 5th row. His speed had already caught up to the majority of the participants. Out of the remaining 8, including Qin Wentian, there were 6 of them standing before the 5th row. Interesting. Lin Xian'er smiled. Qin Wentian had already advanced to the 5th row. What this signified was already self-evident. Before this, Qin Wentian started from the 1st row and used the longest amount of time to comprehend his insights. Hence, he was at a disadvantage at the start and was injured by Di Shi, almost facing the danger of being eliminated. But because his foundation was extremely stable, Qin Wentian would only grow stronger and stronger. By the time he finished comprehending the 3rd row, he would have already thrown Di Shi out. Now Qin Wentian had already advanced to the 5th row. The number of monuments he comprehended wouldn't be any less than the others. What would the ending be? He was really looking forward to it. There's still the 6th and 7th row. I need to defeat 2 more people before I can reach the end. Right now there are only 8 people remaining. I can't wait any longer. Qin Wentian silently mused. If he didn't defeat 2 more people, he wouldn't be able to reach the final row. This was something he didn't want to see. Not only Qin Wentian had such thoughts, the others had the same thoughts as well. Right now, other than Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu who were at the 6th row, the others were all at the 5th row. However, Gu Lufeng had already defeated 6 people. It was sufficient for him to reach the final row. Hence, he didn't need to defeat any more opponents. What he wanted to do now was to seriously comprehend his insights. Hua Taishu was still lacking 1 person. Hence, he initiated an attack. His target was none other than Ji Feishue from the Battle Sword sect. At the same time, Li Tian had already infiltrated Dongyue Hanjiang's monument. Evidently, he understood that he had to act now. Qin Wentian first chose an ancient monument. After that, he didn't even have time to comprehend his insights before he infiltrated Qi Lian's monument. Upon seeing this scene, the hearts of the spectators pounded madly. 3 supreme battles actually began at the same time. Among the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, the most mysterious one is Hua Taishu. He chose Ji Feishue. Back then, Ji Feishue's cultivation base was the weakest among the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. When he entered the immortal martial realm, his cultivation base was only at the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper. I wonder what the outcome of this battle would be. Li Tian from the Heaven Punisher clan and Dongyue Hanjiang, the crown prince of the Eastern Mountain country, both of them are proficient in combat. I wonder what kind of energy they cultivated in the monuments, but I'm sure it's something that's in line with their nature. If these 2 were to fight in the outside world, it's still hard to predict who would win. As for the battle between Qin Wentian and Qi Lian, a strange feeling appeared in the hearts of the spectators. They felt that the battle between this dark horse was the clearest. Qin Wentian's chances of victory were extremely high. A character who wasn't one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses was actually the most favored. If this was in the past, it would be extremely ridiculous. But for some reason, many people now felt that Qin Wentian's chances of victory were extremely high. Because they had personally witnessed Qin Wentian's steady progress, advancing step by step. The battle between Hua Taishu and Ji Feishue began. Hua Taishu stepped out, giving off an illusory feeling, as though he wasn't real at all. Ji Feishue had cultivated several types of energy in the monument, but the most important one was still his sword arts. A row of ancient swords hummed as they slashed through the air, incomparably resplendent. However, Hua Taishu was still as carefree as before. When the sword light slashed onto his body, it was as though it was nothing more than an illusory shadow. He was everywhere and his entire body was surrounded by resplendent halos of light, giving off a feeling that everything was unreal. Ji Feishue is most probably going to be defeated. This Hua Taishu's strength far surpasses our imaginations. The hearts of the spectators trembled. As for the other battlefield, Li Tian transformed into a giant, trampling the heavens and earth, suppressing the heavens. In the 4th row, Qin Wentian chose the monument that contained the fiend god heavenly suppression art. Li Tian had also cultivated it before, but he didn't obtain a cultivation art, only an innate technique. Chapter 591. Li Tian's attacks were as tyrannical and domineering as he was in the external world. However, Dongyue Hanjiang didn't lose out in the slightest and actually clashed head-on with Li Tian. Both of them exuded an unexcelled aura, their might towering up to the heavens as their battle was extremely intense. Out of the three battles, Qin Wentian's battle was the quietest. Qi Lian and Qin Wentian stood facing each other. Qi Lian's entire body radiated an intense blood-colored devilish might, resembling a devil. Behind him, a resplendent devil phantom manifested as chaotic qi currents gushed forth, shaking the heavens and earth. However, when he stared at Qin Wentian, his gaze didn't contain the slightest bit of contempt. On the contrary, his gaze was extremely solemn. He was very clear that Qin Wentian, who cultivated steadily from the first step, was an extremely dangerous character. In fact, there was a high possibility that he was one of the most dangerous characters here. When the 8 era-suppressing geniuses stepped onto the stone monuments, they all adopted a balanced stance, comprehending the energy within while not delaying their own progress. This was especially so when they saw others advancing forward. They didn't want to fall behind. It was only until they reached the 4th and 5th row did they begin to slow down, using more time to comprehend the energy within. For a situation like Qin Wentian's, the best way to deal with it would be to kick him out as soon as possible. Sadly, Disher didn't manage to do so back then. And in the end, Disher was even blasted out by him. This made them understand that they had missed the best opportunity to deal with Qin Wentian. Right now, Qin Wentian had already become an extremely dangerous character. Staring at Qin Wentian, Qi Lian's devilish might gushed forth as a blood-colored light illuminated the skies. His entire body was enveloped by a blood-colored runic light, blotting out the sun. Very swiftly, the scene projected by the stone monument turned the color of blood, as though numerous devil kings were howling in rage. Boom! Trampling on the void, Qi Lian seemed to have transformed into a demon. He stared at Qin Wentian, his eyes filled with a terrifying penetrative power. The power of destruction was astonishing. Upon seeing such a scene, the hearts of many on the floating bridges trembled violently. Before this, they all faintly felt that Qin Wentian would be able to defeat Qi Lian. But now, when they saw the tyrannical might radiating from Qi Lian, they couldn't help but doubt their own conjectures. After all, none of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses were simple characters. Qi Lian was different from Disher. He had also spent a long time comprehending the last 2 stone monuments. He should be much stronger compared to the time when Disher was eliminated. Qi Lian lifted his hand and blasted out a palm imprint. It was as though all the blood-colored light in the world swept out like a flood, rushing towards Qin Wentian. It was as though a terrifying devil was wielding a great halberd as it rushed over. Qin Wentian felt as though there was a giant standing in front of him. Golden light radiated from his body as Qin Wentian's silhouette flickered as he soared through the air. Instantly, astral light enveloped him as his body grew taller, transforming into an immortal fiend god that could suppress the heavens and earth. Boundless astral light cascaded down from the heavens, cascading onto him. This giant abruptly manifested many illusions as he blasted out palm imprints that could pluck down the sun, moon and constellations, crushing the heavens and earth. This shocking scene caused the hearts of many to pound unceasingly. It was as though even their breathing had stagnated. The palm imprints destroyed everything. The blood-colored demonic halberd was destroyed under the astral light. Qi Lian still stood there arrogantly, yet a hint of desolation could be seen in his tyrannical eyes. He was already very strong, but who would have thought that a strange existence would appear in the immortal martial realm this time around? A strange existence named Qin Wentian. Bang! A fearsome might blasted over as Qi Lian was blasted out of the monument by Qin Wentian. This battle was the last one to erupt, but it was also the earliest to conclude. The powerful Qi Lian was defeated by Qin Wentian just like that. His ranking on the monument this time around was number 8. Many people on the floating bridges drew in a deep breath, feeling that the scene before their eyes was too surreal. Seems like the path of the young man from the battle sword sect was truly unstoppable. It seemed like everyone had underestimated him when it came to ranking within the top 5. Li Tian and Dongyue Hanjiang were still engaged in a violent battle. Hua Taishu's body was shrouded by boundless halos of light that were both illusory and real, unfathomable, just like his mysterious name. However, Ji Feishue wasn't someone to be trifled with. His sword arts were extraordinary, combining both offense and defense into one, with no flaws at all. After Qin Wentian defeated Qi Lian, he didn't stop his invasion. After which, he proceeded to enter Fan Miaoyu's monument, causing the spectators to be dumbfounded. The low-profile young man before had now completely unleashed his fangs. So what if he was one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses? No one would be able to obstruct his advancement. As long as he defeated Fan Miaoyu, it would be sufficient for him to walk all the way to the 7th row of the monument. After cultivating all 7 types of energy, he would be the same as Gu Lufeng, the greatest winner in the immortal martial realm. Unless there was someone who could blast him out of the monument before he reached the 7th row. But obviously, it was impossible. Currently, Gu Lufeng was busy with his cultivation and wouldn't take the initiative to battle again. If Hua Taishu defeated Ji Feishue, he would be able to safely walk to the 7th row of the monument. Naturally, he wouldn't look for anyone else to battle, unless they had to wait until the final battle, when they had to contend for the rankings of the immortal martial realm. Fan Miaoyu was a disciple of the forgotten immortal tower from one of the 9 great sects, as well as the holy maiden of the Tianfan sect. Her long hair was tied up in a bun, and although she wasn't old, she exuded a sense of nobility and elegance. This kind of beauty was even slightly demonic, completely opposite to Lu Bingyu's temperament. Her eyes were limpid, yet there seemed to be many stories within them. It was as though her eyes could speak. I've thought of many possibilities, but I didn't expect such an ending. Fan Miaoyu's voice was very clear, giving off a sense of elegance. Evidently, she was surprised that the person who eliminated her was a young man she had never paid attention to before. Qin Wentian had already eliminated Di Shi, domineeringly defeating Qi Lian. Although Fan Miaoyu was someone extraordinary, she also knew that she had no chance of winning this battle. The times are changing. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. A beautiful smile appeared on Fan Miaoyu's red lips as she stared at the young man in front of her. That's right, the times are changing. For those characters who once exuded magnificence throughout their generations, which of them didn't trample on the bodies of others to rise up? After the immortal martial realm, your name will surely shake the entire royal sacred region. However, this doesn't mean that the 8 era-suppressing geniuses have already been defeated. This is only the immortal martial realm. If you want to replace them, you still have to prove yourself in the outside world. I'll wait and see, who will you trample on, becoming an existence that can dazzle the entire era. I will. Qin Wentian nodded his head as he released his own astral light. At the same time, Fan Miaoyu also unleashed her own power. Although she knew she would lose to her opponent in this battle, she still wanted to do it in a spectacular manner. This battle was extremely fascinating, and the ending was undoubtedly Fan Miaoyu being defeated by Qin Wentian. However, other than a trace of desolation, she didn't reveal any other emotions. Just like what Qin Wentian had said, the times were changing. When an era-suppressing genius rose up, there would naturally be others who would be used as foils. Sadly, she was one of them. The other 2 battles had yet to conclude. Fan Miaoyu's ranking was fixed at number 7 by Qin Wentian. An instant later, Ji Feishue was finally defeated by Hua Taishu. There were no miracles. His ranking was fixed at number 6 in the immortal martial realm. The battle between Li Tian and Dongyue Hanjiang was the most intense, shaking the heavens and earth. Eventually, Li Tian narrowly won against Dongyue Hanjiang. This indicated that Dongyue Hanjiang's ranking would be number 5 in the immortal martial realm. From number 5 to number 10, the rankings were all out. They were Dongyue Hanjiang, Ji Feishue, Fan Miaoyu, Qi Lian, Lu Bingyu and Si Ling. The remaining 4 would become the top 4. These 4 were Gu Lufeng, Hua Taishu, Li Tian and Qin Wentian. The competition in the immortal martial realm was also nearing its end. The one who caused the most surprise in this battle was naturally Qin Wentian, followed by Hua Taishu. Out of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, Qin Wentian alone eliminated 3 of them. Such a battle record. No one else could stand shoulder to shoulder with him. Right now the most awkward one should be Li Tian. He needed to defeat one more person before he could reach the 7th row. But for the remaining 3, just thinking about it caused people to feel despair. Gu Lufeng, Hua Taishu and Qin Wentian, if there were no accidents, they would already be the top 3 rankers of the immortal martial realm. Before this, who would have thought that Qin Wentian would be one of the top 3 rankers? Not only that, among the 9 great sects, 7 great clans, as well as the 2 empires, there's only one such person. Neither Gu Lufeng nor Hua Taishu is Qin Wentian. The spectators sighed in their hearts. If the spectators outside saw such an ending, they would surely be shocked speechless. Di Shi had been observing the battle from the first row. At this moment, his fists were tightly clenched as killing intent flashed in his eyes. He stared at Qin Wentian, his killing intent flickering in and out of existence unmasked. He, Di Shi, hadn't even obtained an immortal art, and was already eliminated by Qin Wentian. Not long ago, Qin Wentian didn't even dare to face him head-on. But now, Qin Wentian, who killed his younger brother, had actually defeated him in the immortal martial realm. Let alone Di Shi, even Ji Feixue and Duan Han were in a daze. Right now there were only 3 from the battle sword sect here. Ji Feixue, Duan Han and Lu Bingyu. Who would have thought that the one to walk till the end would be Qin Wentian? Junior brother Qin, what a pleasant surprise. Ji Feixue had a bitter smile on his face. His heart was filled with complex emotions. Lu Bingyu stared at the silhouette before her as waves of emotions rose in her heart. She then glanced at Ji Feixue beside her as she mused that from today onwards, Qin Wentian's status in the battle sword sect would be on the same level as Ji Feixue's. Outside the immortal martial realm, on the gigantic stone monument, over 70 names flashed unceasingly. Each and every one of these names was extremely famous in the royal sacred region, including Gu Lufeng and the other 8 era-suppressing geniuses. But what would the final ranking be like? I wonder how many steps have we reached now? The top 10 should have already been decided. Who would be in the top 10 this time around? Many people speculated. The 8 era-suppressing geniuses should occupy 8 spots. As for the other 2, it might be Xiling from the Violet Thunder sect. After all, he's extremely powerful. Or the Saint Child of the Supreme Demon sect. Naturally, Lu Bingyu from the Battle Sword sect, Nangong Shuang from the Nangong Aristocrat clan, and the great beauty Lin Xian are all have high hopes. That makes sense. But for the top 3, I think the first place would be Gu Lufeng, the second place would be Fan Miaoyu, and the third place would be Li Tian. I guess the first place would be Gu Lufeng, the second place would be Qi Lian, and the third place would be Di Shi. Many people were speculating in low voices. The number 1 spot was none other than Gu Lufeng. As for the second and third place, everyone had their own opinions. However, Hua Taishu didn't appear much in the top 3. After all, he was the latest to rise to fame. As for Qin Wentian, he didn't even appear in the top 10. After all, outsiders couldn't see the situation inside. Chapter 592. In the immortal martial realm, the spectators on the floating bridges saw that the dust was about to settle. Many people headed down, wanting to observe the final battle from a closer distance. There were only 3 final battles left in the immortal martial realm, and the final rankings would be determined. Very swiftly, not far away from the monument, an army of geniuses appeared. Naturally, if one were to compare the number of geniuses who entered the immortal martial realm, the number of geniuses here was simply too little. 80% of them had already fallen in the immortal martial realm. How terrifying was that? So many heroes of the royal sacred region had died in the immortal martial realm. Yet the ones who succeeded were only these geniuses who managed to enter the immortal martial realm. Di Shi could feel the gazes of several people staring at him as his countenance turned extremely grim. Before this, he couldn't sense it when they were on the floating bridges, but now it was much more obvious. After all, Di Shi was the only one who didn't manage to enter the top 10 of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. If one were to talk about who was the most humiliated, he would naturally attract the most attention. If it was any other day, Di Shi wouldn't care about how many people were looking at him. In truth, no matter where he went, he would always be the center of attention. Only today, he felt that the gazes of these people were so piercing to his eyes, causing him to exude a baleful aura. Many people hurriedly averted their gazes. This baleful aura was akin to the dark clouds above the crowd, as though a violent storm would descend at any moment. Disher turned his head and glanced at the crowd. The first people he saw were those from the Supreme D clan. Upon seeing the faint disappointment in their eyes, Disher felt an unbearable pain in his heart. He remembered that many elders of the Supreme D clan had told him before that when the ranking monument of the immortal martial realm was released, they would personally come to the immortal martial realm and watch as his name, Disher, shone with a boundless radiance. He simply didn't dare to imagine how disappointed the elders of the Supreme D clan would be when they saw that his name wasn't in the top 10. Not long ago, Diyu was killed in front of him. Diyu was one of the leaders nurtured by the Supreme D clan. After he stepped into the celestial phenomenon realm, Diyu would replace his position in the heavenly dipper realm. All of this was destroyed in the hands of Qin Wentian. At this moment, Disher's gaze landed on Fan Lo and the others as an incomparably intense killing intent erupted forth from his eyes. It was because of the conflict between these people and Diyu that his younger brother, Diyu, was killed. These people actually still dared to appear before him? They simply didn't know the immensity of death. Fan Lo and the rest were standing at the back, yet they didn't expect Disher's eyes to be so sharp. Yi Lingshuang also furrowed her brows, but she wasn't too worried. Her relationship with Duan Han wasn't bad. Hence when they came over, she had called Duan Han over to her side in case something unexpected happened. However, Yi Lingshuang's beautiful eyes swiftly froze because she saw Disher directly lunging towards her. A resplendent light flashed as a baleful aura gushed forth. His body was akin to a fearsome primordial bird of prey, transforming into a hurricane that swept through the air. Those in front of him hurriedly evaded, while those who couldn't evade in time were forcibly swept away by him, causing them to cough out blood from the impact. In the blink of an eye, Disher had already traversed space and appeared before Fan Lo and the rest. Duan Han naturally saw him. As his sword slashed out, the heavens and earth dimmed. But in this dimmed space, the light radiating from Disher grew even more resplendent. His palms blasted out as numerous primordial birds of prey manifested, directly tearing apart Duan Han's sword. Not good. Yi Lingshuang's countenance abruptly changed. 8th level of Heavenly Dipper. She seemed to have forgotten that Disher had broken through to the immortal martial realm. The sword of darkness slashed out in rage, wanting to sever the darkness of the night. However, Disher's body seemed to transform into numerous afterimages as he unleashed an explosive attack at the same time, destroying everything. This was none other than the energy he had cultivated in the Heavenly Dipper monument. Bang! Duan Han's body was directly flung through the air, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Disher wanted revenge. Die! Disher coldly roared. At the same time, numerous attacks flew towards Fan Lo and the rest, causing expressions of despair to appear on their faces. Under this attack, they would die without a doubt. In front of Disher, even if they were at their peak, they wouldn't have the slightest ability to resist. Disher was still Disher after all, an era-suppressing heaven chosen. Although he was defeated in the Heavenly Dipper monument, there was no need to doubt his strength. Now that he was at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, there were only a few Heavenly Dipper sovereigns who could be his opponents in the entire Royal Sacred Region. On the other side, Ji Feishue and Lu Bingyu had already noticed Disher's attack, and they hurriedly sped over. Although they were about to arrive, they were already too late. They were behind Disher, and had no way to launch their attacks towards Yi Lingshuang and the others. Disher! Ji Feishue roared in rage. His sword slashed out, slashing apart the void. Bang! On the other side, Disher's attack landed. However, it wasn't as destructive as imagined. A beautiful silhouette blocked this attack. That ethereal silhouette caused the spectators to be stunned. It was actually Lin Xian, who blocked Disher's attack. How tyrannical was Disher's infuriated attack! Lin Xian was directly flung through the air as she coughed out fresh blood, dyeing her robes red. This scene caused the spectators to feel heartache in their hearts. Di Shi, who had broken through to the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, was simply too domineering. Although Lin Xian was also a Heaven's Chosen, her cultivation base was weaker compared to Di Shi. She was injured in a single strike, and as she was flung backwards, she slammed into Yi Lingshuang, injuring Yi Lingshuang as well. After all, Yi Lingshuang's cultivation base was still suppressed. Luckily at this moment, Ji Feixue and Lu Bingyu's attacks arrived. Di Shi had no choice but to turn and defend against their attacks. The three of them instantly erupted into a grand battle. Although Ji Feixue's cultivation base had increased, he had yet to break through to the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper. As an era-suppressing genius, the advantage of having a higher cultivation base could be clearly seen. Di Shi's attacks were tyrannical, bombarding Ji Feixue and Lu Bingyu to the point where they could only defend. Duan Han rushed over to surround Di Shi, but the three of them had no way to restrain him. "Stay your hand." A cold voice rang out, echoing in the eardrums of Di Shi and the others. After which, they only saw a white-robed emissary standing in the air, coldly staring at them. "Whoever dares to make a move here and disturb the comprehension of others, I will kill you." As the sound of his voice faded, Di Shi had no choice but to stop. His cold eyes swept over Ji Feixue, Fan Lu and the others as he icily stated, "The royal sacred region is vast, but there's no place for you guys to live." Brazen. Ji Feixue's voice was as sharp as a sword. Qi permeated the air. "Right now, among the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns of the Battle Sword sect, there's no one who can stop me from killing people. Ji Feixue, if you anger me, I will kill you as well." Di Shi pointed his finger at Ji Feixue, incomparably arrogant. This caused the countenances of those from the Battle Sword sect to turn ashen, only to hear Yi Lingshuang retorting, "Don't forget how you were defeated. Since he can defeat you inside the monument, he can do the same in the outside world as well. Oh, I'm waiting for him to court death." Di Shi's gaze swept over to Qin Wentian in the direction of the monument as his killing intent soared. The person he, Di Shi, wanted to kill the most was none other than Qin Wentian. At this moment, Qin Wentian was immersed in his comprehension of the great dream immortal art, and he had no idea what was happening outside. The monument he chose was one that was compatible with the mandate of dreams. Such monuments were exceedingly rare, and he only found this one when he reached the 5th row. Naturally, he wouldn't miss it. Qin Wentian was originally already cultivating the great dream immortal art, and was also proficient in the mandate of dreams. Yet the innate technique of this monument actually used one's will and one's eyes to create a dreamscape, causing one to unknowingly fall into a dreamscape. Not only that, it was an extremely terrifying dreamscape. Qin Wentian could faintly sense that if this ability was cultivated to the highest level, it would be similar to the dream he experienced in the royal tomb, causing one to fall into a dreamscape for a short period of time. Time flowed by unknowingly. Quite a number of days had already passed since the participants entered the immortal martial realm. Out of the remaining 4, other than Qin Wentian, who was still at the 5th row, the other 3 were all at the 6th row. At this moment, the final battle was about to begin. Evidently, they wanted to deepen their understanding of the mandate of dreams. Once they exited the stone monument, the effects of their own cultivation would be greatly reduced. The battle finally erupted. Li Tian challenged Hua Taishu. If he didn't defeat at least one of them, he wouldn't be able to proceed to the 7th row. Hence, the other 3 had chosen to challenge him, only he didn't. This battle to determine the top 3 rankings ended with Li Tian's defeat, causing the spectators to have a clearer understanding of Hua Taishu. The mysterious Hua Taishu, the low-profile Qin Wentian, together with Gu Lufeng, they became the greatest winners in this trip to the immortal martial realm. Once the rankings were released, a terrifying tidal wave would surely be created. Finally, Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu both ascended to the 7th row, while Qin Wentian ascended to the 6th row. The 3 of them had a tacit understanding, choosing not to challenge each other. Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu had already ascended to the 7th row. Naturally, they had to complete all the mandate of dreams required for this trip to the immortal martial realm. Qin Wentian wasn't in a hurry either. This time around, the stone monument Qin Wentian chose was one that emanated a sword intent. As for the last type of mandate, Qin Wentian chose it without any hesitation. Only then would it be compatible with his mandate. Within the stone monument, Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the dome of the heavens. There was no magnificent sword art, nor was there any sword technique that could sever the heavens and earth. There was only a faint sword chi emanating from the silhouette floating in the air, giving off a feeling that man was the ruler of the sword. That overwhelming sword might wasn't released by the sword, but by the man. Not only that, it wasn't the will of the mandate of the sword, it was purely a kind of sword sense. If I can reach this level, the second level of my mandate of the sword would definitely be at the perfection boundary. Not only that, I would be able to form a sword with a single thought. Qin Wentian mused as he sank into a state of comprehension. The final battle was about to arrive, yet the atmosphere was strangely quiet. This kind of silence persisted, yet no one revealed any signs of impatience. They were all quietly waiting for the final battle to begin. Chapter 593. This time around, Qin Wentian stayed in front of the monument for a total of 18 days, before he walked towards the 7th row. On the 7th row, there were only 3 monuments and there didn't seem to be any powerful fluctuations emanating from them. Qin Wentian actually had no way to sense any sort of energy from the monuments. Now that Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu each occupied a monument, he had to either defeat one of them first or choose the last monument. Qin Wentian chose the last monument. After his consciousness entered the monument, he was stunned. Within the monument, Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu were standing together with their backs facing him. So it turned out that the 3 monuments were actually connected. In front of Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu, there was a statue of a man. However, just a single glance at the statue would cause one to feel as though they were looking up at a towering mountain, wanting to prostrate themselves on the ground and worship the statue. This is... Qin Wentian was somewhat taken aback in his heart. He walked forward, arriving at the side of Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu as he stared at the statue in front of him, feeling the shock and awe it brought forth. All of you are here. At this moment, a voice drifted over from the void, drifting into the ears of the 3 of them, causing their hearts to tremble as they stared at the statue in front of them. Is Senior the one speaking? Gu Lufeng asked as he stared at the statue. The statue in front of them actually lit up. Yes. Another voice drifted out. Qin Wentian and the others couldn't help but feel their hearts trembling. This statue actually contained the will of a supreme expert? There's no need to feel strange. This seat is the master of the immortal martial realm. Back then, I also came from the royal sacred region. Since we're fated to form a connection here, I naturally want to do something for the royal sacred region. The voice from the statue was calm, there were no fluctuations to it at all. For those who could reach this point, they all know of my existence. Although I'm willing to form a connection with all of you, I still have to see if you have the qualifications to do so. Hence, the immortal martial realm is filled with so many trials. Although the hearts of Qin Wentian and the others weren't calm, they still listened seriously and quietly. The statue in front of them was a true immortal existence, an extremely powerful character from the legends. The sect leader of the royal sacred sect, the hegemon of the royal sacred region, was precisely a character of this level. He governed an entire region, affecting millions and millions of lives. One could very well imagine how terrifying the authority in his hands was. And right now there was such a character in front of them. Being able to walk to the front of this stone monument means that you will be able to obtain some of the treasures I left behind. Not only that, you won't lose your life. As for you guys, since you are able to reach this point, you can all be considered the most outstanding geniuses of this generation in the royal sacred region. The voice of the statue didn't fluctuate at all, it was as calm as water, causing those who heard it to feel extremely comfortable, like a spring breeze. To you the royal sacred region is extremely vast. Maybe it's the entire world you see now, but in truth, the world is far from what you see. Only after you leave would you understand how vast the world really is. This immortal martial realm was left behind by me. And the envoys of the immortal martial realm were all sent by me. If you all wish to leave the royal sacred region, just come to the immortal martial realm. The envoys of the immortal martial realm will receive you and arrange everything for you. The voice from the statue continued. I won't say too much. I believe you all have your own plans. You can leave whenever you wish to. The immortal martial realm will always welcome you. After the voice finished speaking, the statue dimmed, and no more sound could be heard. However, the hearts of Qin Wentian, Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu found it hard to calm down. There was no need to doubt that the immortal martial realm was left behind by an immortal. This immortal had even told them many things, and the three of them were all extremely intelligent. They quickly understood everything. In the royal sacred region, the royal sacred sect was the supreme hegemon. As long as one was a heaven's chosen, they would all eventually gather in the royal sacred sect. Hence, the royal sacred sect had an unparalleled status. However, the royal sacred region wasn't the only one in the royal sacred region. There were also many powers outside the royal sacred region. For example, the power the master of the immortal martial realm was from. The master of the immortal martial realm created the immortal martial realm in the royal sacred region. Other than wanting to form ties with the heaven chosen of the royal sacred region, there was naturally another unstated purpose. Most probably, this purpose was the most important: to recruit geniuses. If a power wanted to prosper, they would need an endless stream of geniuses from the younger generations to join them. Naturally, those who could walk to the end of the immortal martial realm were all extremely outstanding. Although there might only be 1 or 2 in 10 years, what about 100 years, 1,000 years, or even 10,000 years? When one reached the legendary immortal realm, it was unknown how long their lifespan would be. If they could establish a sect and use this method to recruit the most outstanding geniuses, it would naturally be an extremely good choice. At the same time, some of the heavens chosen of the royal sacred region could also use the immortal martial realm to exit the immortal martial realm. However, after they exited, they would have to join the master of the immortal martial realm. If not, why would the master of the immortal martial realm spend so much effort on something that was useless to him? Obviously, it was impossible. The immortal martial realm could exist in the royal sacred region for eternity, and the royal sacred region had never interfered. From this, one could see how powerful the master of the immortal martial realm was. In addition, those who could walk to the end of the immortal martial realm would definitely be able to obtain an immortal art. Since the master of the immortal martial realm could easily impart immortal arts to them, how powerful would he be? In fact, the master of the immortal martial realm might even be in existence that surpassed the sect leader of the royal sacred sect. Undoubtedly, there would be many who would choose to leave. For example, the human emperor of Yi. If it wasn't for the fact that Yi Qingyan had descendants in Yi, he would have long since left. If he could find a successor, how could he not leave? The master of the immortal martial realm was extremely powerful, using such a gentle method to tempt them. This wasn't something ordinary people could imagine. Everything will end soon. Gu Lufeng turned, staring at Qin Wentian and Hua Taishu. The three of them stared at each other. Next, it would be a battle that belonged to them. Your courage is admirable. Although everyone knows that cultivating steadily from the first monolith would be beneficial to the later stages, you were the only one who truly did it. After all, it was a risk. Obviously, you succeeded. Gu Lufeng smiled at Qin Wentian. It didn't seem like he was hostile towards him. The three of them had all cultivated the 6 stone monuments, but if one were to say whose foundation was the most solid, it would undoubtedly be Qin Wentian. If the first person to attack me wasn't Sure but you, maybe the ending would be different. Qin Wentian replied with a smile. Gu Lufeng was the one who moved the fastest and was proficient in archery. If he had acted when Qin Wentian was at the first monument, Qin Wentian might really have been blasted out. But evidently, Gu Lufeng disdained to do so. Qin Wentian then turned his gaze to Hua Taishu. Right now, Hua Taishu's demeanor was even more extraordinary, giving off a feeling that he had returned to his natural state. Back in Grand Xia, many people already thought that I would die in your hands. Now that we've met in the immortal martial realm, it seems like we are fated to have a battle. Qin Wentian slowly spoke. Hua Taishu similarly stared at Qin Wentian. No emotions could be seen in his eyes. It was unknown what he was thinking in his heart. Actually, I don't hate you as much as others think I do. Hua Taishu slowly continued. There's no need to doubt how outstanding you are. The first time I met you was back in Chu. At that time, I didn't even consider you as an enemy. You didn't have the qualifications. Even when you killed Xiaoyan, you still didn't have the qualifications to do so until you obtained the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings. It's not wrong for you to kill Xiaoyan. Based on what he did to Mo Qingcheng, you have a reason to kill him. However, he is still my younger brother after all. No matter how much of a bastard he is, I still have to avenge him. Although I admire you, if I have the chance to kill you, I won't show mercy in the future. Even if you meet me in the outside world, you still have to be resolute in your determination to kill me. Because if you don't kill me, I will think of ways to take your life. There's only one point. I don't wish for the grudges between us to implicate the Hua clan. Consider this as me leaving a path of retreat for the Hua clan. After all, if I don't kill you, it would be a calamity for the Hua clan. But if I kill you, I won't implicate your family and friends. Hua Taishu's voice was calm. Qin Wentian stared at that pair of clear, yet slightly illusory eyes as he nodded his head. You, the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings, have always been suppressing Chen Wang. The disparity between you and him is truly unbridgeable. How should we fight? Hua Taishu asked as he glanced at Gu Lufeng. Gu Lufeng smiled. After which his silhouette flickered, and very swiftly, the three of them stood in a tripartite formation. Terrifying auras gushed forth from them as raging gales swept across the heavens and earth. It was as though they had some sort of tacit understanding. They could read each other's thoughts just by looking at each other's eyes. A resplendent light flashed as an arrow appeared. Gu Lufeng brandished the bow in his hands. Astral light flashed as the arrow pierced through the air, aiming for Hua Taishu and Qin Wentian. The instant the arrow shot out, the stone monuments on the 7th row all shone with a resplendent light. The light of the arrow was as bright as the stars in the sky, flashing past in an instant. The battle has begun, the decisive battle. Why isn't there any projection? I can see 3 people fighting together. The hearts of the spectators behind the stone monuments trembled. Earlier, when they saw the 3 stone monuments glowing with resplendent light, they instantly understood that the decisive battle had already begun. Gu Liufeng's arrow was extremely fast, possessing a terrifying penetrative power. Hua Taishu's body seemed illusory, and when the arrow landed, his silhouette would turn illusory. As for Qin Wentian, his entire body turned golden, and his palms plucked the stars as he blasted the arrow down. However, Gu Lufeng was still standing at his original location. His arrows were aimed at the skies, not at the humans, but at the void instead. The arrows pierced through the heavens and descended from the skies, resembling a meteor shower as they shot towards Hua Taishu and Qin Wentian. The meteors transformed into a meteor shower that blotted out the skies, resembling the true shooting down from the 9 heavens. Bang bang bang. The entire space was buried by the rain of arrows. Hua Taishu's body was unceasingly being struck, but every time he was struck, his true body would appear at the side. Qin Wentian transformed into a giant, lifting his palms to shake the heavens. Nothing he couldn't overcome. Not even the arrows that landed had the slightest effect on him. The 3 stone monuments unceasingly flickered with resplendent astral light, causing the hearts of the spectators to pound wildly. What a powerful astral light! It was like a rain of arrows. What level of combat was this? They wanted nothing more than to drill into the stone monuments to investigate. Hua Taishu's silhouette transformed into a series of afterimages, elongating unceasingly as he rushed towards Qin Wentian and Gu Lufeng. These afterimages would occasionally separate, and occasionally merge together. It was like there were a million incarnations of Hua Taishu, all of them blasting out palm imprints at the same time, aiming for Qin Wentian and Gu Lufeng. Gu Liufeng's arrow vanished. The saber in his hand flashed with a flash of saber light, capable of severing the moon and splitting the sky. Bang! Qin Wentian stepped out, stomping on the ground, suppressing everything. His body that had transformed into a fiend god actually shot out with lightning speed, as though he had a pair of golden wings on his back, rushing towards Hua Taishu and Gu Lufeng. With a thunderous roar, Even the heavens and earth were about to shatter. Numerous fiend gods appeared in the air, each of them capable of suppressing the heavens and earth. They blasted out palm imprints. The power of thousands upon thousands of star-seizing palm imprints encompassed the entire space, unblockable, sweeping through everything. One strength to subdue 10. One strength to break through the void. Qin Wentian roared in rage. It was as though numerous fiend gods descended from the sky, suppressing the earth. Yet another wave of star-seizing palm imprints blasted out, causing the earth to rumble with thunderous rumbling sounds. Bang bang. Two groans of agony rang out. Hua Taishu's true body was forced out from the impact as blood seeped out from the corners of his mouth. Gu Lufeng was similarly injured. The two of them simultaneously swept their gazes towards Qin Wentian. That fiend god incarnation. One strength to subdue 10. One strength to break through the void. Hua Taishu and Gu Lufeng simultaneously rushed towards Qin Wentian. The palms of the spectators were all wet with sweat, yet they could only see blurry silhouettes. They were so nervous that they found it hard to breathe. Chapter 594. There were only 3 combatants, but the number of participants before the stone monuments in the immortal martial realm was so vast that all of them wanted to squeeze their way to the front. They could only see the 3 stone monuments flashing with resplendent light, and the scene was the same every time. Faintly, they could see a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering battle taking place. Not only that, it was a chaotic battle between Gu Lufeng, Hua Taishu and Qin Wentian. Many had beads of perspiration rolling down their foreheads as their breathing became uneven. Even those era-suppressing geniuses were feeling nervous. They had been eliminated, leaving only Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu. Would they be able to defend their title as era-suppressing geniuses? Or would they be able to witness the rise of another era-suppressing genius? Before the end of the battle, nobody would know the answer. Although Qin Wentian was very domineering, Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu were both characters who managed to reach the 7th row of stone monuments. How could they be weak? It was just that they were extremely unhappy. They were unhappy that they couldn't see the projection of the stone monuments as clearly as before, allowing them to enjoy the battle to their heart's content. However, there were people who were even more unhappy than them. Although they had no way to see the battles clearly, they could still see the blurry silhouettes of the battles taking place in the immortal martial realm. And at this moment, outside the immortal martial realm, the gigantic stone monument blocked everyone's path. Nobody knew what was happening inside. They only knew that over 70 participants had already entered the ranking battle. These 70+ participants would be the final ranking battle. Up in the skies and down on the ground, countless silhouettes could be seen. At the area in front of the stone monuments, the Heavenly Dipper sovereigns had all retreated and were replaced by celestial phenomenon ascendants from the various major sections. For example, the experts from the Nangong aristocrat clan. There was a group of experts from the Nangong aristocrat clan clad in robes with tassels on them, exuding a carefree aura. They stared at one of the names on the stone monuments as a fiery heat flashed in their eyes. Nangong Shuang, are you able to obtain one of the top 10 rankings? Someone from the Nangong aristocrat clan asked in a low voice. Stop dreaming. A cold voice drifted over from the side. The people from the Nangong aristocrat clan turned their gazes over to the person who spoke. It was a silhouette mounted on a gigantic nether wolf. The demonic chi from this group was extremely intense as they exuded an aura of wildness. They were none other than experts from the Supreme Demon Sect. The name of the saint child of your Supreme Demon Sect hasn't even appeared on the stone monument. Yet you actually dare to boast so shamelessly. An expert from the Nangong aristocrat clan coldly laughed as he pointed at the stone monument. The experts from the Supreme Demon Sect felt their sore spot being stabbed. Their countenances turned ashen. One of them coldly stated, when he comes out, I will definitely ask him what is going on. Maybe he won't be able to come out. The experts from the Nangong aristocrat clan mocked, their words causing the countenances of the experts from the Supreme Demon Sect to change. Han Tian, Han Yu, the two of you have disappointed the clan. The experts of the Li clan also arrived. They looked at the stone tablet, but there was neither Li Han Tian's name nor Li Han You's name. Hanyo's age is still young and her luck isn't good. If she hasn't broken through to celestial phenomenon 10 years later, she might be able to give it a try. A cold voice drifted over. The expert from the Li clan glanced at the person who spoke and nodded his head, not bothering to refute the words of the other party. This person was none other than the master of Li Hanyu, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. She naturally had the qualifications to speak such words. The beloved disciple of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness, Lu Bingyu, has entered the stone monument. I wonder what her ranking would be? An expert from the Li clan asked. Top 10. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness faintly spoke, her voice filled with an intense self-confidence. She personally came to the immortal martial realm because she wanted to see the name of her disciple, Lu Bingyu, radiating a dazzling radiance. This time around, my battle sword sect did very well. On the ranking monument, there are 4 names: Ji Feishue, Duan Han, Lu Bingyu and Qin Wentian. A middle-aged man beside the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness spoke. He was clad in a fiery robe and exuded an extraordinary aura. He was none other than the Flame Mountain Sword Sovereigness of the Battle Sword sect. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness glanced at the 3 words Qin Wentian as her brows furrowed. She involuntarily recalled the words that young man had spoken to her back in the royal palace of Yi. Hence she coldly snorted. Qin Wentian might have entered the ranking because of Ji Feishue and Duan Han's help. He's ranked at the bottom. The Flame Mountain Sword Sovereigness laughed but didn't say anything. He knew that the personality of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness was extremely stubborn. As for Qin Wentian, he wasn't too familiar with him. As the sound of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness voice faded, she abruptly furrowed her brows as an intense coldness radiated from her. After which, she turned her head only to see a few silhouettes walking over. The ones in the lead were 2 old men. One of them was slovenly dressed with a messy beard, yet he exuded an aura of immortality. Earlier, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness could clearly feel the sharpness in their gazes when they stared at her. Yet at the instant she turned her head back, she only saw the 2 of them casually glancing at her. Who are you guys? The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness gaze abruptly turned sharp. She actually had a feeling that she couldn't see through these 2. But she could guarantee that she, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness, had never met these 2 before. The gazes of several people turned over. The auras of this group of people were extraordinary. Although they appeared casual, they actually exuded the aura of a grandmaster. The countenances of the 2 of them were as calm as ever. They turned their gazes away, no longer looking at the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. Their silhouettes landed on the stone pillar as they stared at the ranking monument in front of them. The silhouettes of Mo Qingqing and those from the Medicine Sovereign Valley flickered. Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flashed with a resplendent light, while those from the Medicine Sovereign Valley also had expressions of shock on their faces, because they saw that the people following behind the 2 of them were actually their elders, masters, or even ancestors. In that case, what were the identities of these 2 old men? Mo Qingqing walked to the side of the slovenly dressed old man on the left. Her eyes were downcast as her dainty hands were tightly clenched, as though she was extremely nervous. The eyes of the old man landed on Mo Qingqing as a meaningful smile appeared on his face. After which he continued. I heard that you are in love, and which heaven chosen of the royal sacred region are you in love with? Which sect leader or sect leader's disciple is it? As the sound of his voice faded, the hearts of those from the Medicine Sovereign Valley violently pounded. In the Medicine Sovereign Valley, there was only one person who could make Mo Qingqing act so cautiously, and speak to Mo Qingqing in such a manner. Other than that mysterious existence, who else could it be? Their hearts pounded as their silhouettes flickered, arriving below the stone pillar. After which they knelt on one knee as they respectfully greeted. Disciple pays her respect to the Medicine Sovereign, pays her respect to Master and Ancestor. Medicine Sovereign. These 2 words instantly caused great waves of commotion in this space. Countless gazes turned to the 2 silhouettes on the stone pillar as their hearts pounded. The Medicine Sovereign Valley stood aloof from worldly affairs, and the Medicine Sovereign didn't care about external affairs. However, as an existence at the peak of the alchemy world in the royal sacred region, the Medicine Sovereign's status was undoubtedly transcendent. the medicine sovereign actually personally came to the immortal martial realm. Since when did he, who stood at the peak of the alchemy world, become so interested in a place like the immortal martial realm? It should be because of Holy Maiden Mo Qingcheng. It's rumored that the medicine sovereign dotes on the Holy Maiden to the extreme. Now that the Holy Maiden has fallen in love outside, how could he not care? That fellow Qin Wentian is in for it. He actually abducted and sold the disciple of someone else without the medicine sovereign's approval. Many mused silently in their hearts. No wonder Mo Qingcheng was so nervous. Seems like she was worried about the medicine sovereign's attitude. A sharp glint of light flashed in the eyes of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. Earlier, when the medicine sovereign ignored her, she was extremely unhappy in her heart. In the entire royal sacred region, there weren't many people who could ignore her, but unfortunately, the medicine sovereign was one of them. Thinking of this, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness couldn't help but feel a sense of depression in her heart. It was rumored that this undying old man had lived for countless years. There were many times when she heard that he was nearing the end of his lifespan, yet he just didn't die. The most recent time was over 20 years ago, and the rumors were extremely ferocious, saying that the medicine sovereign couldn't hold on any longer. From this, one could very well imagine how difficult it was to ask the medicine sovereign for help. It was said that the human emperor of Yi Qingyun, was on the verge of death and wanted to ask the medicine sovereign for help. However, only a holy maiden went to him. From this, one could very well imagine how difficult it was to ask the medicine sovereign for help. As she thought of this, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness glanced at Qin Wentian's name. Since the medicine sovereign came here for the sake of Mo Qingcheng, he would definitely teach this fellow a lesson about the immensity of the heavens and earth. The arrival of the medicine sovereign caused a huge wave of commotion outside the immortal martial realm. Although there were many peak characters from the major powers here today, including the Sword Sovereign of the Battle Sword Sect and the supremacies of the Violet Thunder Sect, none of them had the weight of the medicine sovereign. Qin Wentian's name instantly became the focal point of many discussions. This was because of his relationship with the Holy Maiden, Mo Qingcheng. Most probably, the medicine sovereign was here because of this. Master. Mo Qingcheng inclined her head when she heard the medicine sovereign's question. Her clear and beautiful eyes flickered with a hint of stubbornness. Mo Qingcheng knew that since the medicine sovereign was here, how could he not know who Qin Wentian was? The medicine sovereign's words caused her to feel a sense of pressure. You are already in love and yet you are already glaring at Master like this. Can't I even say a single sentence? You have no conscience. The medicine sovereign sighed, his words causing Mo Qingcheng to hurriedly interject. Master's kindness to me is as heavy as a mountain. You know that's not what I meant. Okay, I know. The medicine sovereign rubbed Mo Qingcheng's head, his actions causing the hearts of many to tremble. Seems like the rumors were true. Everyone only knew that the medicine sovereign doted on Mo Qingcheng, but they didn't expect him to dote on her to such an extent. I really want to see who this fellow who abducted my disciple is. Can he be ranked first or second in the immortal martial realm? The medicine sovereign stared at the monument, exuding a sense of imposingness. This caused Mo Qingcheng to feel even more nervous as her heart pounded unceasingly. As for the people in the surroundings, they couldn't help but sigh. First or second? Was the medicine sovereign joking? Although Qin Wentian's talent was extraordinary, it was already extremely lucky for him to be able to enter the top 20. Maybe he could already be considered as having good luck, but the saint child of the Supreme Demon Sect's name was already excluded from the rankings. If it wasn't for the fact that the people from the Supreme Demon Sect wanted to personally ask the saint child what happened, they would have already left in anger. Chapter 595. Inside and outside the immortal martial realm, countless people were filled with anticipation for this battle. Within the stone monument, the battle had already reached its climax. Qin Wentian's body shimmered with resplendent astral light, as though he had transformed into a fiend god. His physique was incomparably gigantic, with faint traces of an indestructible golden body. A pair of resplendent wings appeared on his back, seemingly capable of destroying everything. while also possessing an incomparably powerful defense. However, what sort of character was Gu Lufeng? He was the only one among the 8 era-suppressing geniuses who didn't join any power. He was also the one with the highest number of votes for the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. He was the target of admiration for countless female geniuses, and if it wasn't for the fact that Lufeng wasn't a playboy, it was unknown how many females would willingly offer their bodies to him. Hua Taishu was mysterious and unfathomable, but since he was able to walk all the way to the top ranker like Gu Lufeng, one could see how powerful he was. He was once the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings of Grand Xia, and even Chun Wang was suppressed by him to the point where he couldn't do anything. Although Grand Xia couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the Royal Sacred Region, it didn't mean that there weren't any demon-level geniuses in Grand Xia. It was just that they hadn't walked out yet. Both Hua Taishu and Qin Wentian had walked out and displayed their outstanding talent. Right now, Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu could feel the pressure from Qin Wentian. The two of them simultaneously launched their attacks towards Qin Wentian. Hua Taishu was still in an illusory realm. The great illusionary realm, the real and the fake, the illusory and the real. Each and every one of Hua Taishu's bodies were shrouded in resplendent halos. These halos unceasingly erupted with resplendent astral light, blasting towards Qin Wentian. Each and every one of the halos blasted out different palm imprints, drowning the heavens and earth as they frenziedly blasted towards Qin Wentian, wanting to crush this entire space. Hua Taishu's combat prowess was so strong that it could shake the heavens and earth. Gu Liufeng's arrows transformed into shooting stars, raining down unceasingly, slamming into Qin Wentian. At the same time he stepped out, the saber light radiating from him actually manifested a myriad of saber lights that could slash apart the constellations. Even though Qin Wentian had transformed into an immortal devil physique, and his might shook the heavens, he was still struck by the incomparably violent attacks from the two of them. Although Qin Wentian started from the first stone monument, Hua Taishu and Gu Liufeng's comprehension abilities were also extraordinary. Their comprehension towards the next few stone monuments were also extremely deep, and their attacks were extremely powerful. The light radiating from Qin Wentian's body grew increasingly resplendent. With a loud shout, he stepped out with great strides as numerous illusory figures appeared, their palms plucking the stars. At this instant, it was as though there were countless pairs of gigantic eyes staring at Hua Taishu and Gu Lufeng. The bodies of the three of them trembled violently. Gu Lufeng radiated a saber intent that shot up to the heavens, while Qin Wentian radiated a sword might that towered over the heavens and earth. Kill, kill. Two thunderous roars abruptly shook the heavens and earth. Many incarnations of Qin Wentian appeared before Qin Wentian, enveloping him completely. Each incarnation blasted out resplendent imprints as runic light towered up the heavens, capable of destroying everything. The saber intent radiating from Gu Lufeng was extremely powerful, unceasingly lacerating Qin Wentian's body, wanting to dismember Qin Wentian into 1,000 pieces. If his opponent wasn't Qin Wentian but someone like Di Shi, he would have already died on the spot. Qin Wentian groaned in misery. At this instant, he could faintly feel the saber light radiating from his body, wanting to break apart his body. At the same time, from the external world, a heaven-shaking saber slashed down, capable of cleaving apart the physique of an immortal devil. Roar! Qin Wentian threw his head back and roared. His golden wings shone with a resplendent luster. His fiend god physique seemed to be covered with the wings of a golden-winged great rock. He lifted his palms and blasted out. Hua Taishu's countless palm imprints collided with the star-seizing palm, causing rumbling sounds to echo out. At the same time, Qin Wentian plucked the golden wings off his back and slashed them out in the air. Boom! Stepping out, sword chi could be felt, destroying everything. The space within the monument started to tremble unstably, and in the immortal martial realm, the spectators only saw the three monuments flashing with an incomparably resplendent light. In an instant, countless images intertwined, and they could faintly see a heaven-shaking, earth-shattering battle taking place. After which, the light radiating from the three monuments completely engulfed the entire space, so dazzling that it was blinding to the eyes. The entire space trembled as the three monuments shot out beams of light at the same time, intertwining with each other. After which, intense rumbling sounds rang out, causing the entire space to tremble. Boom! A thunderous boom rang out. The spectators only felt the earth trembling violently. The beams of light from the three monuments pointed ahead, and over there, an incomparably gigantic bronze gate that shone with a dazzling astral light actually appeared. This gate slowly opened as the astral stairway appeared in the eyes of the spectators. The light from within was so dazzling that it caused the hearts of countless people to tremble. Where was this place? The spectators in front of the immortal martial realm inclined their heads and stared at the envoys standing on both sides of the monument. Yet they didn't know that the envoys also had expressions of shock on their faces. The gate to the World Monument had actually opened. The envoys from the immortal martial realm then turned their gazes onto the three young silhouettes in front of them. The three of them actually floated up into the air, and the ancient monuments in front of them also floated up together with their bodies, forming a tripod formation. Crashing sounds rang out from within as a brilliant light flickered unceasingly. One could faintly see the situation of the battle within. Who would have thought that the three youths of this batch would be so powerful, forcefully breaking open the gate to the World Monument? This was a phenomenon that had never happened before, and it indicated that this batch of participants in the immortal martial realm was going to have an unprecedented battle. Naturally, this battle wasn't completed by two people, but by three instead. Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu's battle had truly ignited a flame. They disregarded everything and joined forces to attack Qin Wentian. Although the number one ranker of the immortal martial realm was already very clear, they were still willing to go all out in a frenzy to fight against such an opponent. Not for anything else, but for the sake of respecting their opponent. Hence, the two of them joined forces and fought as one. Within the monument, a resplendent glow enveloped the heavens and earth. Qin Wentian stepped out step by step, and every step he took was filled with sword qi, wanting to slash apart everything. There were palm imprints that could pluck the sun, moon and stars, causing the void to explode. Hua Taishu still had many incarnations, real and fake. Gu Lufeng wasn't only powerful, his attacks also contained an incomparably terrifying corrosive effect. Qin Wentian was slashed by a saber, and his arm was almost severed from his body. Not only that, when his arrows landed on his body, not only could they attack his physical body, they could even corrode his heart. These two were truly terrifying opponents. Qin Wentian finally gave up on attacking Hua Taishu, and focused all his attention on attacking Gu Lufeng. He knew that if he couldn't even defeat one of them, there was only one strategy left, and that was to defeat one of them first. Gu Lufeng stared at Qin Wentian, who ignored Hua Taishu's attacks. Incomparably intense waves rose in his heart. That pair of incomparably gigantic eyes seemed to want him to fall into a deep slumber. Not only did he have to defend against Qin Wentian's attacks, he also had to defend against the corrosive effect of the Dream Force. Finally, Gu Lufeng personally witnessed Hua Taishu smashing Qin Wentian's right arm off, injuring him. For this, Gu Lufeng didn't hesitate as he rushed forward. He shoots the nine heavens descended, unceasingly bombarding Qin Wentian. At the same time, he transformed into a saber light that slashed towards Qin Wentian's other arm. Fresh blood gushed out, and even Qin Wentian, who was in the external world, couldn't help but cough out a mouthful of blood. But at the same time, Gu Lufeng saw Qin Wentian's right arm that could pluck the sun, moon and stars blasting over, engulfing his entire body. Boom, boom, boom. Gu Lufeng had no way to defend anymore. He violently coughed out blood as he gasped for breath. He stared at Qin Wentian with an expression of shock on his face as he asked, "Is this a dream you created? When did you create it?" "My arm was almost chopped off. The blood is also real. My left arm was chopped off by you as well. This is too fake. How can I allow you to enter my dreamscape?" Qin Wentian replied. Hua Taishu also stopped his attacks on Qin Wentian. His silhouette transformed into one as he stood proudly in the air, his long robes fluttering in the wind. Although his countenance was calm, who could understand the shock in his heart? "When fighting against you, I still have to guard against you creating a dream to deceive me. How agonizing is this kind of battle? Being your opponent is truly a nightmare." Gu Lufeng was speechless. Such an opponent was simply too terrifying. Qin Wentian's attacks and defenses were already extremely strong. In addition to the fact that he had the ability to create dreams, he was simply a nightmare for any opponent. The flowing wind isn't romantic. The calm lake splits the moon. He shoots down the 9 heavens. Gu Lufeng, your reputation is truly well-deserved. With just a bow and arrow, you can roam the world. With just a saber, you can also do whatever you want. Who would be willing to have an enemy like you as their opponent? Qin Wentian sighed, as though he had a feeling of admiration for Gu Lufeng. It's over. Gu Lufeng faintly spoke. It's over. Hua Taishu similarly spoke. The two of them no longer had any thoughts of continuing the battle. Everything was already pointless. Since the first place was already Qin Wentian's, what was the point of fighting for the second and third places? Boom, boom, boom. The ancient monument trembled as it landed on the ground. Qin Wentian and the other two also landed on the ground. After that, the glow of the monument gradually dimmed. Gu Lufeng, Hua Taishu, and Qin Wentian all opened their eyes at the same time, gleaming with sharpness. In that instant, the hearts of the spectators behind them all pounded violently as they stared fixedly at the scene in front of them. Had the battle finally ended? But how was the battle situation? In the battle for the immortal martial realm, who would be the victor? Chapter 596. Within the immortal martial realm, silence filled the air. Even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Countless gazes landed on Qin Wentian and the other two. Although at this moment, they all wanted to loudly ask who was the first ranker, they maintained their silence, hoping to get an answer from the expressions on the faces of Qin Wentian and the other two. However, they were disappointed. Qin Wentian, Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu were all so quiet that it was terrifying. Not only that, there wasn't even the slightest change in their countenances. They didn't even converse. They simply stood there quietly, as though they were still digesting the battle earlier. An instant passed, yet it felt like an eternity. Finally, the crowd saw the three of them moving. They exchanged glances as faint smiles could be seen on their faces as they nodded to each other, as though they were expressing their respect for their opponents. However, such a scene caused the crowd to go crazy as they cursed in their hearts. Why don't the three of you say something? Who obtained the first position? Who obtained the second position? However, Gu Lufeng had always been a loner and didn't know anyone. Naturally, no one would dare to question him. And even if they did, Gu Lufeng most probably wouldn't reply. Hua Taishu was even more mysterious. No one was very familiar with him. Only Qin Wentian had quite a few friends. However, even Fatty Fan Lu endured it. Although he wanted to ask the question in his heart, he still persuaded himself that he would find out sooner or later. There was no rush. Although he warned himself this way, his heart was still itching to ask the question. But in such a situation, if Qin Wentian didn't obtain the first position, wouldn't it be too awkward for him to ask the question? At this moment, a row of silhouettes walked out from the bronze giant in front of the stone monument. These people were all clad in white. They were none other than the envoys of the immortal martial realm. They stood at the bottom of the staircase and one of them spoke. The Realm Lord of the immortal martial realm invites the participants who participated in the battle to enter the stone monument. The Realm Lord of the immortal martial realm? The hearts of the crowd pounded violently. After which, they only saw the envoys waving their hands as the stone monument in front of them parted, revealing an ancient pathway that led to the center of the bronze gate. Senior, is the Realm Lord the master of the immortal martial realm? Gu Lufeng asked. After all, he had personally seen the master of the immortal martial realm before. That was a true immortal, and by right, he shouldn't be in the royal sacred region. No, after the master of the immortal martial realm created it, the Realm Lord became the controller of the immortal martial realm. One of the envoys spoke. Gu Lufeng nodded his head silently. That's right, the master of the immortal martial realm was an immortal from the legends. After handing over the immortal martial realm to others, the envoys of the immortal martial realm would all obey his commands. Among the crowd, those core disciples from the ancient sects like Di Shi all had their brows furrowed. They had never heard of the existence of the immortal martial realm's boundary monument before. And they also didn't know about the realm lord of the immortal martial realm. Seems like things were different this time around. The 75 participants who participated in the monument battles would be listed on the ranking monument of the immortal martial realm. Only they had the qualifications to enter the world steel. Only now, they all lifted their feet and walked towards the ancient pathway ahead. With Qin Wentian and the other two in the lead, they walked towards the bronze gate and ascended the staircase, arriving at the center of the world steel. This place was a palace that was illuminated by astral light. Every stone rampart was shimmering with resplendent light, and there would occasionally be ancient characters flashing within. In front of them, there was a figure sitting cross-legged on a stone platform in the middle of the astral pool. At this moment, his eyes were slightly opened as he nodded his head to the participants. "This is our realm lord." The envoys of the immortal martial realm introduced. Momentarily, Qin Wentian and the others didn't dare to show any disrespect. They all bowed and greeted. "Juniors, pay our respects to the realm lord. It's rare for the world steel to be open today. I am also extremely honored to be able to meet the geniuses of the younger generations of the royal sacred region. Are there any people from the war country among you?" The realm lord of the immortal martial realm surveyed them with a smile on his face. The crowd exchanged glances. There were no experts from the war country among these 70-plus participants. Seeing that no one responded, the realm lord of the immortal martial realm sighed with disappointment. "Senior is the son of the Wu King from the war country 300 years ago?" At this moment, a voice drifted over. The person who spoke was none other than Li Tian from the barbarian race of the southern region. His eyes gleamed with sharpness as he stared at the realm lord of the immortal martial realm. "To think that there would still be people who remember me." The realm lord of the immortal martial realm paused for a moment before he smiled. Momentarily, the hearts of the crowd pounded violently. The realm lord of the immortal martial realm was actually someone from the war country, a heaven chosen of the royal sacred region. Wu Mu, son of the Wu King from the war country. He has outstanding talent, and was a heaven chosen that suppressed the entire era when he was at the heavenly Dipper realm. 300 years ago, he was the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. 3 years later, he broke through to celestial phenomenon and disappeared from the royal sacred region ever since. Many people searched through their memories as they recalled a page of records from the ancient records of their sect leaders, causing their hearts to tremble even more. The missing son of the Wu King from the war country had actually become the current realm lord of the immortal martial realm. This caused the disciples of the major sects to draw in a deep breath. They had heard of some rumors, and now that it was verified, it seemed like the immortal martial realm was truly recruiting people. Since this was the case, didn't that mean that the top 3 rankers of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian, Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu, were also invited by the immortal martial realm? Hence at this moment, the gazes of many turned to Qin Wentian, and the other two as envy filled their hearts. This Wu Mu's strength was unfathomable. It was unknown how powerful he was now. Maybe he was already trying to break through to that legendary realm. Today, I, Wu Mu, am extremely happy to be able to meet with the elites of the younger generations. I will host a banquet for 7 days, and when the immortal martial realm opens, I will return to the royal sacred region for a walk. Wu Mu smiled as he waved his hands. Prepare the banquet. As the sound of his voice faded, the envoys of the immortal martial realm swiftly prepared the banquet. Over 70 people were seated, and on the astral stone table in front of them were delicacies and wine. "Duan Han, junior brother Qin, junior sister Lu, let's sit together," Ji Feishua called out. Qin Wentian lightly nodded his head. "Can I join as well?" Lin Xian gently smiled as she walked over, her beautiful eyes staring at Qin Wentian. She also wanted to know the ending of the battle between Qin Wentian, Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu. If Fairy Lin is willing, it would naturally be our honor. Ji Feishua smiled as he nodded. The 5 of them sat together. Princess Jiaoyang glanced in their direction before sitting down not far away from them. Di Shi's gaze was akin to a sharp blade, piercing towards Qin Wentian. His killing intent was extremely sharp. He wanted nothing more than to rush up and slay Qin Wentian on the spot. Everyone, There's no need to be so courteous. There's no need to stand on ceremony either. Feel free to take a seat. This banquet will last for 7 days. Eat as much as you can, drink as much as you can. Realm Lord Wumu laughed. Everyone nodded their heads. There were already some who started drinking and enjoying the delicacies. This wine. A shocked voice rang out. The gazes of everyone turned to Li Tian, who had drained the wine in his cup in a single gulp. Right now, his countenance was flushed red as astral energy surged within his body. How intense! Li Tian only felt as though his entire body was being roasted by fire. These dishes are all treasures, even more valuable compared to high-grade medicinal pills. It actually caused my perception of astral energy to temporarily increase. Another person exclaimed in admiration. The expressions of everyone turned heavy as they stared at the delicacies on the table. Only now did they realize the meaning behind Realm Lord Wumu's words. 7 days, the banquet would last for 7 days. Eat as much as you can, drink as much as you can. Haha, drink as much as you can. These dishes are all extremely nourishing to you all. Wumu laughed uproariously. Lu Bingyu also tasted a mouthful of wine as her face flushed red. She was an ice-cold beauty, exuding an alluring charm. The Lu Bingyu now was so beautiful that even Ji Lufeng and Duan Han were in a daze. Lin Xian also drank a mouthful of wine. Her beautiful countenance was also flushed red. These two supreme beauties caused the gazes of the people around them to be drawn to them. Sir Qin. Lin Xian gently called out. Qin Wentian turned his gaze onto Lin Xian Facing that intoxicating gaze, although Qin Wentian was already used to beauties, his heart still trembled. Lin Xian who was known as the #1 beauty in the royal sacred region, was currently blushing a deep shade of red, as though she was bashful. There were hints of gentleness in the center of her brows. Can you secretly inform Xian of the ending? Lin Xian's voice was gentle as she winked at Qin Wentian. Momentarily, the gazes of many turned to Qin Wentian. This was also what they wanted to know. With a beauty like Lin Xian asking, no one would be able to reject the answer, right? Qin Wentian started. Earlier, he had also sipped a mouthful of wine, causing the temperature in his body to rise. Astral energy from his body seethed, and now that he saw Lin Xian's beauty, he was momentarily dazed. Lu Bingyu also turned her gaze onto him, her eyes filled with a scorching heat, wanting to know the ending. Shaking his head, Qin Wentian had a bitter smile on his face, silently cursing himself for not having enough self-control. There's no need to be curious. On the ranking monument of the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian will be ranked first. A voice drifted over, causing the hearts of the crowd to tremble violently. If it was someone else who said this, the crowd might still be suspicious. But when this person spoke, not a single person doubted the veracity of his words. Because the person who spoke was none other than Gu Lufeng. Qin Wentian would be ranked first on the ranking monument of the immortal martial realm. The weight of Gu Liufeng's words was extremely heavy. Everyone understood in their hearts that Qin Wentian wasn't ranked third, nor was he ranked second. He was ranked first. A character who wasn't one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, a character who was viewed as a rising star of the younger generation, had actually defeated Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu, obtaining the position of first. The crowd only felt their hearts pounding violently, unable to calm down. From now onwards, Qin Wentian's name would be as resounding as the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, known by everyone in the royal sacred region. Ji Feishue's heart pounded violently, drawing in a deep breath as he stared at the young man before him. He didn't know what he was feeling in his heart. Lu Bingyu cast a deep glance at Qin Wentian. That calm heart of hers, at this moment, was rocked by huge waves, causing her heart to pound unceasingly. Lin Xian's eyes shone brightly as she stared at Qin Wentian. A soul-stirring smile appeared on her red lips as she stared at the calm young man before her. She then spoke in a low voice, "I really want to kiss you." Chapter 597. Lin Xian's voice was melodious and pleasing to the ears. Her face was flushed red from the alcohol she had consumed, adding a tinge of shyness to her countenance. Her countenance was filled with emotions, and the killing power of that gentle expression, to Qin Wentian, didn't lose out in the slightest when compared to Hua Taishu and Gu Lufeng. Usually this Lin Xian didn't display her charm, yet she was already a femme fatale. But right now, she was truly capable of bringing calamity to the masses, causing him to be unable to extricate himself. Lu Bingyu cast a glance at Lin Xian. Although the words and actions of this woman made her feel somewhat inappropriate, she still felt that Lin Xian's character wasn't bad. If not, she wouldn't have taken that palm strike from Di Shi for Yi Lingshuang and the others. And even so, Lin Xian didn't mention this matter to Qin Wentian. Although her reputation wasn't good, her heart wasn't bad. Naturally, the so-called bad reputation was only what Lu Bingyu thought. She wasn't very experienced in the world, and had heard many rumors about the Celestial Maiden sect. Hence, she didn't have a good impression of them and felt that as a female, she shouldn't act in such a manner. But in truth, Lin Xian had never done anything that was out of line before. Right now, the ambiguous word she was saying was already Lin Xian's limit. Cough cough. Qin Wentian coughed. He didn't look at Lin Xian's eyes. That pair of shy eyes of hers could even hook the souls of people away. No wonder the people of the royal sacred region treated the holy maiden of the Celestial Maiden sect as a source of calamity. If this Lin Xian really wanted to seduce someone, there wouldn't be many people who would be able to resist her charms. Not only that, she didn't even have the slightest bit of pretense. TSK, junior brother Qin is the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, and now he even has the favor of Fairy Qin. How envious! Ji Feishua laughed, but he lowered his head, not looking at Lin Xian. His heart was pounding as he silently cursed at Lin Xian for being such a vixen. Even if that sentence wasn't directed at him, it would still cause a fire to burn in his heart, let alone Qin Wentian, who was directly facing her. Xian, stop teasing me. Qin Wentian calmed himself down and shook his head with a bitter smile. Xian is speaking the truth. Lin Xian giggled. The shyness in her eyes caused the people in the surroundings to feel a sense of ecstasy. They silently mused that if Lin Xian could treat them like this, they would definitely have a good time with this vixen. Qin Wentian was speechless. Staring at his expression, Lin Xian's beautiful eyes shone with a brilliant light. After which, she lifted up her wine cup and spoke in a low voice. Okay, I won't joke with you anymore. Congratulations to Sir Qin for obtaining the top ranking in the immortal martial realm. Xian has to offer a toast to Sir Qin. All right. At this moment, Qin Wentian glanced at Lin Xian once more. Although her face was still flushed red, the gaze she used to look at him was incomparably calm, without the slightest ripple. It was as though she didn't have any interest in him at all. The two of them clinked their cups together and drained the contents in a single gulp. The temperature of their bodies grew even more intense as the astral energy in their bodies churned madly. Even their Yuanfu was seething with rage. Bam! Just when the spectators were still pondering over the shocking news of Qin Wentian obtaining the top ranking, traces of killing intent gushed forth, as though this wasn't the right time. So what if you are the top ranker of the immortal martial realm? That merely represents your potential. No matter how much potential you have, if you die, you are nothing. A cold voice rang out. The gazes of the spectators turned over, and when they saw Di Shi's silhouette, they all calmed down. Everyone was very clear about the grudge between Di Shi and Qin Wentian. After Qin Wentian obtained the top ranking, the person who was the most unhappy was none other than Di Shi. Not only did he have a grudge with Qin Wentian for killing his younger brother, he was also the only one among the 8 era-suppressing geniuses who didn't manage to enter the top 10. Not only that, he was also the one who was blasted out of the ranking monument by Qin Wentian. Di Shi naturally wasn't willing to acknowledge the immortal martial realm's ranking monument. Ji Feishua, Duan Han, Lu Bingyu and Lin Xian all frowned. Before this, when Di Shi fought against them, he who had broken through to the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper was in an extremely dangerous situation. If it wasn't for them joining forces, Yi Lingshuang and the others would have already been killed. Qin Wentian still didn't know about this. At the banquet, the sounds of people eating and drinking rang out. Because of a single sentence from Di Shi, The entire banquet turned silent. How can I be compared to you, Dishur? Ranked number 11 in the immortal martial realm. You were defeated by junior apprentice Brother Qin in a fair battle. After that, you acted to deal with Wentian's friend whose cultivation base was suppressed. You only have this little bit of ability. The things you do and the words you say will naturally be circulated out. Although the title of era-suppressing geniuses is just an empty title. If someone's name is still on the list, it wouldn't live up to the name. Junior Brother Qin, I'm afraid you will have to replace someone in the future. Ji Feishua coldly spoke. Qin Wentian's countenance turned cold as he asked, Senior brother, you said he acted against my friend? I was about to tell you about this. He has already broken through to the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, and after he was expelled from the ranking monument by you, he acted against Yi Lingshuang and your friend. If it wasn't for Fairy Qin Wentian intervening, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Fairy Qin Wentian was even injured because of this. You should be thanking Fairy Qin Wentian instead. Ji Feishua's words were naturally to remind Qin Wentian to be careful of Dishur, revealing Dishur's cultivation base as well as the things he had done in the past. This way, Qin Wentian would be prepared. If not, if Dishur did something like this once, he would definitely do it again in the future. An intense coldness abruptly gushed forth from Qin Wentian as he lunged towards Dishur. Dishur was similarly staring at him as he lifted his wine cup and drank a mouthful of wine, pointing his finger at Qin Wentian. His provocation was extremely obvious. Qin Wentian didn't bother with Dishur's provocation. Yet his heart was already filled with an intense killing intent. Dishur was already listed on the list of people he had to kill. Gulping down another cup of wine, Qin Wentian ignored the burning sensation in his heart. He turned his gaze back to Lin Xian. Although Ji Feishua only mentioned it, he could already imagine that if it wasn't for Lin Xian acting, given Dishur's strength, killing Yi Lingshuang and the rest would be as easy as flipping a palm. Lin Xian must have ignored her own injuries to obstruct Dishur, buying time for Ji Feishua and the rest. Not only that, if it wasn't for Ji Feishua mentioning it, Lin Xian wouldn't even have mentioned this matter. This caused Qin Wentian to feel an indescribable sense of gratitude. Xian is merely disapproving of your actions. Sir Qin, you don't have to overthink things. Since Fairy Qin has already treated Sir Qin as a friend, there's no need to thank me. Lin Xian gently smiled. Qin Wentian nodded his head. Xian you don't have to refer to me as Sir Qin in the future, just call me Wentian. Lin Xian had a smile that was not a smile on her face as she stared at Qin Wentian. Wentian, it's easier to say things this way. I'll let you take advantage of me. At this moment, Wu Mu, who was sitting on the stone platform in the middle of the lake, had a smile on his face as he stared at the crowd. He then spoke. Everyone, I'm sure you all wish to see the situation outside, right? Since the banquet has already been prepared, let's add to the atmosphere and prepare to inscribe the rankings on the monument. As the sound of Wu Mu's voice faded, everyone halted. The gazes of the crowd turned to the back of Wu Mu. Over there was a gigantic constellation monument with their names inscribed on it. Could this be the monument leading to the entrance of the immortal martial realm? Even the rankings are inscribed on it? Someone exclaimed in shock. In that case, does this mean that the world monument we are in now is located within the space of the immortal martial realm's ranking monument? Someone guessed. Haha, that's right, that's the monument outside. Your names are inscribed on it. Did you guys think that the rankings were created by us? We were the ones who inscribed the names inside. Wu Mu laughed, not putting on any airs at all. Only now did the crowd understand. In that case, this place is the entrance and also the exit. We took a detour and returned to our original location. It's just that the scenery outside has changed? Li Tian asked. That's right. Wu Mu nodded. Everyone finally understood what was going on, only to see that at this moment, the ancient monument turned transparent. From here, one could actually see the situation outside clearly. Countless silhouettes stood outside the immortal martial realm waiting. When they saw these people, all of them were filled with deep shock. Only now did they know that there were actually so many people waiting outside. waiting for the rankings to be released. Master is here. Lu Bingyu's beautiful eyes froze as she stared at the extraordinary silhouette standing on the stone pillar outside. It was none other than the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. As though she thought of something, Lu Bingyu sneakily glanced at Qin Wentian. A complicated expression could be seen in her eyes. If her master knew that not only did she fail to surpass Ji Feishue, she even became friends with Qin Wentian. Not only that, Qin Wentian even obtained the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. What would her master think? Di Shi's eyes narrowed as his countenance grew increasingly unsightly. Outside he could see the experts from the Supreme D clan waiting there. Qin Wentian's gaze landed on that beautiful silhouette. Her gaze was filled with nervousness as she stared at the monument. Her dainty hands were tightly clenched as a hint of anticipation could be seen on her beautiful face. Upon seeing her expression, Qin Wentian felt a surge of warmth in his heart. Most probably, only for matters concerning him would that beautiful silhouette reveal such an expression of nervousness. Who is he? Qin Wentian glanced at the old man beside Mo Qingcheng. This old man exuded an extraordinary aura. The experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley stood respectfully behind him, and Mo Qingcheng would occasionally glance at him with nervousness. This involuntarily caused Qin Wentian to speculate. Could it be that this old man was the Medicine Sovereign? Currently, there seemed to be many powerful characters arriving outside the immortal martial realm. It wasn't impossible for the Medicine Sovereign to be here personally. Separated by the monument, the people inside each had their own thoughts. Yet outside the immortal martial realm, everyone was extremely nervous. The names on the monument vanished. They knew that the immortal martial realm's rankings would soon appear. A bright light flashed as the first name was engraved. The last name was actually an expert from the Divine Dragon Castle, causing those from the Divine Dragon Castle to feel somewhat disappointed. Following which, the second name, the third name, and the rest of the names appeared. Princess Jiao Yang's name also appeared. She actually didn't even manage to enter the top 20. Many people sighed in admiration. Those floating names were all extremely famous characters, but how many of them could actually enter the top 10? Bingyu hasn't appeared yet. At this moment, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness felt a trace of nervousness in her heart. She hoped that Lu Bingyu's name would appear as late as possible. Di Shi, it's all up to you now. The countenances of those from the D clan were all filled with excitement. They wanted to see Di Shi's name appear in the top 3 rankings. Every time a name was engraved, the hearts of the crowd would pound. When the top 20 names were engraved, there was already no one who wasn't nervous. None of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses have appeared. Seems like all of them will be able to enter the top 10. The hearts of the crowd mused. Although Qin Wentian's name hadn't appeared yet, the crowd had already chosen to forget about him. However, there was one person who couldn't be forgotten, and that was none other than Mo Qingcheng. Her countenance was slightly flushed. She was extremely nervous. Wentian, he hasn't appeared yet. Finally, when the 12th name was engraved, many drew in a deep breath. It was finally here. Seems like the 8 era-suppressing geniuses had all entered the top 10. Di Shi, you won't disappoint the D clan. Those from the D clan were all filled with excitement. At this moment, the name of the 11th ranker was engraved. The 2 words Di Shi were imprinted into the eyes of the crowd. Instantly, it was as though a tidal wave ruthlessly slammed into the hearts of countless people. At the same time, those from the D clan were all stunned. Di Shi, one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, Di Shi. His name, the 11th ranker, was kicked out of the top 10. Chapter 598. Di Shi. Those from the Supreme D clan almost coughed out a mouthful of blood when they saw the silhouette of the Supreme D clan. Why did so many of them come here? Undoubtedly, it was because they wanted to personally witness the heaven chosen of their clan, Di Shi, obtaining a good ranking. But now they discovered that not only did Di Shi fail to obtain a good ranking, he was even kicked out of the top 10. Feeling the countless gazes directed at them, as well as the unceasing whispers, one could very well imagine how depressed they felt in their hearts. What they didn't know was that right now, Disher could clearly see their reactions and expressions from within the stone monument. He was similarly filled with incomparable agony, and his killing intent towards Qin Wentian grew even more intense. Disher was actually kicked out of the top 10, and is only ranked number 11. In that case, other than the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, there should be 3 others who managed to enter the top 10. Who are they? The crowd started to search for the remaining names in their minds. Of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, there were still 3 spots remaining. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness lips curled up in a proud smile as she spoke in a low voice. Bingyu, you truly didn't disappoint me. Now everyone could already see that Lu Bingyu had officially entered the top 10. Yes, the disciple of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness, Lu Bingyu, has entered the top 10. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness voice instantly caused an uproar. Who would have thought that Lu Bingyu would be so powerful? Haha, my disciple Si Ling. You are indeed the treasured disciple of Master. Not far away, an expert from the Violet Thunder sect laughed uproariously, causing the crowd to shudder. This fellow was truly complacent. He actually referred to Si Ling as his treasured disciple. Many in the crowd felt goosebumps rising on their skin, but it was only natural. How glorious was it to be ranked within the top 10 of the immortal martial realm? That's right, Si Ling's name was on the stone monument, but it hadn't appeared yet. Evidently, his name should still be at the bottom. Lu Bingyu and Si Ling were both ranked above Disher. Si Ling is the pride of my Si clan. The experts from the Si clan also arrived. They drew in a deep breath as they inclined their heads and stared at the sky. Something that even Crown Prince Shangtong of Grand Shang couldn't accomplish. Of course, Si Ling of their Si clan had done it. As expected of the number 1 genius of the Si clan. Other than nervousness, there was also a hint of excitement on Mo Qingqing's face. Very few people remembered that there was a name named Qin Wentian that hadn't appeared yet, but the person Mo Qingqing was paying attention to was none other than Qin Wentian. The medicine sovereign turned his gaze onto Mo Qingqing, as a smile that was not a smile appeared on his face. He spoke in a low voice. Why? Are you very happy that your little boyfriend managed to enter the top 10? Mo Qingqing stared at her master. She clenched her fists tightly as she seriously nodded her head. Her appearance was extremely ladylike, yet there was a hint of determination in her eyes. She was naturally happy. Those from the Medicine Sovereign Valley shuddered. That's right, Qin Wentian's name hadn't appeared yet. Next, it's time for the top 10 rankings. Everyone's hearts were filled with nervousness. However, the top 10 rankings had yet to appear. Yet they didn't know that at this moment in the World Monument, the Realm Lord of the Immortal Martial Realm, Wu Mu, had a faint smile on his face when he saw the excited expressions on the faces of the crowd. Were they filled with anticipation? Tomorrow at this time, we'll carve the top 10 list again. Wu Mu lightly smiled, as though he was teasing, intentionally whetting the appetite of those outside. He wanted to let these people know the weight of the Immortal Martial Realm's rankings, causing them to be filled with anticipation. The people in the banquet hall all perspired, but since Wu Mu had already said this, they could only smile bitterly. Hence, everyone ate and drank to their heart's content as their bodies underwent a transformation. Qin Wentian felt as though he was in a dream. His perception of the constellations grew even more intense, and the floating ancient characters on the stone walls grew clearer and clearer. This banquet is truly extremely nourishing. Qin Wentian silently mused. He felt that if he continued to crazily eat and drink for 7 days straight, his cultivation base might even break through to the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. But after half a day, he discovered that he couldn't eat or drink anymore. His entire person felt tipsy. Not only him, the others were the same as well. This caused them to understand Wu Mu's words even more deeply. Eat as much as you can, you must work hard to eat and drink. Hence, everyone went crazy, eating even if they couldn't eat, drinking even if they couldn't drink. Hence, the ending was that when they woke up the next day, they discovered that their bodies were already lying on the banquet table. What made Qin Wentian even more embarrassed was that after he woke up, he discovered that Lin Xian was right in front of him. Her breath was like the fragrance of orchids as her fragrance permeated his nostrils, causing him to be intoxicated and unable to extricate himself. Her beautiful face was just inches away from his, exuding a sense of allure. Not only that, behind him, Lu Bingyu was lying on the other side. A jade-like arm was wrapped around his head, causing Qin Wentian to carefully move that jade-like arm away. After which, he drew in a deep breath and climbed up, only to see Wu Mu looking at him with a smile that was not a smile. "Senior, this wine is too strong," Qin Wentian awkwardly replied. It's too strong. If it was me, I wouldn't have woken up so quickly." Wu Mu had a smile that was not a smile on his face, causing Qin Wentian to feel extremely embarrassed. His face was flushed red, and this scene caused Wu Mu to involuntarily laugh uproariously. At this moment, Qin Wentian didn't notice that on Lu Bingyu's jade-like face, her eyelashes fluttered. Her entire body was incomparably hot, as though she had a fever. Earlier, when Qin Wentian moved her arm away, she had already woken up. Now, she could only continue sleeping. Right now Lu Bingyu even had the heart to die. She actually used her arm to wrap around a man's neck? Lu Bingyu's heartbeat quickened. She didn't know what else she did when she was drunk. Thinking of this, her heart pounded madly as her body trembled. Seems like she mustn't drink the wine here recklessly. Ooh. Qin Wentian drew in a deep breath as he stared at that beautiful countenance outside. Upon seeing Mo Qingqing's nervous expression, Qin Wentian silently cursed himself. Qingqing was still waiting for him outside. Most probably, ever since he entered the immortal martial realm, Qingqing had always been so nervous. As he thought of this, a gentle smile flickered in Qin Wentian's eyes. It was extremely gentle, extremely radiant. When Lin Xian'er opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was the radiant smile on Qin Wentian's face. That undefeatable and arrogant young man in the immortal martial realm actually had such a gentle side to him. Sitting up, Lin Xian'er stared outside. With a single glance, she saw that dazzling silhouette. Such a woman, no matter where she stood, would always be the first to attract the attention of others. Everyone gradually awoke, truly experiencing the might of the banquet. But when they woke up, they could faintly sense that their cultivation bases had advanced a little. This caused them to be filled with joy. Immortals were indeed immortals. They all came from major sects and clans, yet it was impossible for them to enjoy such treatment. If they could eat and drink like this every day, their cultivation bases would surely improve even faster. Prepared to inscribe the rankings, Wu Mu indifferently stated. The spectators outside the immortal martial realm were already in a frenzy of discussion, all of them guessing what the rankings of the top 10 would be like. Right now they were already clear about the names of the top 10 that didn't appear. Even Qin Wentian was recalled, causing them to involuntarily sigh in their hearts. Who would have thought that Di Shi would be ranked number 11, and Qin Wentian would actually be ranked within the top 10 as well? How shocking! The number 10 ranking should be Qin Wentian. Many were speculating in their hearts. At this moment, on the ancient monument, a dazzling light blossomed, following which, a few words appeared. It was a name that emitted a golden glow. This was the treatment given to the top 10. Xiling, it's Xiling, the number 10 ranker of the immortal martial realm. Xiling. The spectators were somewhat taken aback. They had initially thought that the possibility of Qin Wentian being the top 10 ranker was higher. Those from the Violet Thunder sect all had unsightly expressions on their faces. Just the number 10 ranker? The Battle Sword sect had 3 rankers who were ranked within the top 10. The number 9 ranker should be Qin Wentian, right? At this moment, another resplendent light flashed as the second name appeared. Lu Bingyu. Lu Bingyu from the Battle Sword sect, number 9 ranker of the immortal martial realm. The Battle Sword sect actually has 3 rankers within the top 10? How powerful! Lu Bingyu is number 9, Qin Wentian should be number 8, and the most powerful Ji Feishue. I wonder what rank he would be in. The eyes of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness flashed with sharpness. Could it be that Lu Bingyu still wasn't able to surpass Ji Feishue? Not only that, the young man who threatened her in the royal palace of Yi had yet to appear. Qilian, the number 8 ranker is Qilian. The crowd exclaimed in shock as another name appeared. A disciple of the Blood Devil Palace. a junior of the Qi clan of the Western Domain, Qi Lian. His combat prowess was extremely high, yet he was only ranked number 8? Fan Miaoyu number 7. Another name flashed. The only female among the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, the powerful Fan Miaoyu, was only ranked number 7. This caused many experts from the Forgotten Immortal Tower to feel disappointment. To Fan Miaoyu, number 7 wasn't a good ranking. Ji Feishue from the Battle Sword Sect, number 6. How can this be possible? Out of the 3 from the Battle Sword Sect, Lu Bingyu and Ji Feishue have already appeared, but Qin Wentian still hasn't appeared. Could there be a mistake? Could it be that Qin Wentian has already been excluded from the ranking monument? When the number 5 ranker, Dongyue Hanjiang's name appeared, the speculations of the crowd grew even more intense. Something must have happened inside that caused Qin Wentian's name to be excluded. If not, how could Qin Wentian be in the top 4? Li Tian, the number 4 ranker is Li Tian. The crowd exclaimed as they stared at the monument. Next, it was time for the top 3 rankers. Gu Lufeng truly didn't disappoint us, he's as dazzling as ever. There's also the mysterious Hua Taishu. He's actually so powerful as well. As for the last ranker, who is he exactly? Could it be that I've forgotten someone? Although Qin Wentian had some fame, he was still far from being able to compare to the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. The crowd would rather believe that there was an accident inside than to believe that Qin Wentian could be ranked in the top 3. This was simply too inconceivable. Mo Qingqing's beautiful countenance was flushed red. She was so nervous that her heart was about to leap out of her chest. The top 3 rankers, he's still as outstanding as ever. Mo Qingqing was still afraid that it would be hard for her to explain things to her master. But now that she saw Qin Wentian's ranking, she relaxed a lot. If this was the case, her master would surely like him. At this moment, a dazzling light shone from the ancient tablet. 2 names appeared on the second row of the ancient tablet. 2 names, side by side, appeared at the same time. They were Gu Lufeng, Hua Taishu. For the top 3 rankers, could Gu Lufeng and Hua Taishu be considered side by side? Who's the first ranker exactly? The hearts of the crowd were about to leap out of their chests. Gu Lufeng actually failed to obtain the first rank. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness furrowed her brows. She also didn't think that Qin Wentian would be able to obtain the first rank. But next, when the most dazzling light flashed, 3 golden words appeared at the top of the Immortal Martial Realms ranking monument. This was an iron-like truth, ruthlessly smashing into the hearts of the crowd. First ranker of the Immortal Martial Realm, Qin Wentian. Chapter 599. The ranking monument of the Immortal Martial Realm shone with a golden light. At the very top, there were only 3 words, shining with boundless resplendent light. Qin Wentian. It was actually Qin Wentian. At this moment, outside the Immortal Martial Realm, there was no commotion. In fact, it was so quiet that it was terrifying. Countless gazes stared at the 3 words as great waves of shock rose up in their hearts. They had thought of too many possibilities. Maybe Qin Wentian had been removed from the rankings for some unknown reason. Or maybe the person ranked first was a heaven chosen that they had neglected. But the truth was just so shocking. Without a doubt, the person ranked first was none other than Qin Wentian. That Qin Wentian who had once killed Yi Kongfan in the royal palace of Yi, as well as the little ancestor of the Di clan, Diyu, in front of Di Shi, made use of the Immortal Martial Realms test this time around to complete a magnificent transformation. His name was engraved at the top of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. During this trip to the Immortal Martial Realm, Qin Wentian suppressed the 8 era-suppressing geniuses whose names shook the entire royal sacred region. From now on, Qin Wentian's name would be known by everyone in the royal sacred region. Maybe one more of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses would be added to the list. The 9th era-suppressing genius in the Heavenly Dipper realm had officially appeared in the vision of everyone. When did I become blind? Or is it an illusion? A voice broke the silence. After which, a thunderous boom rang out as the silent space erupted into an uproar, sighing in admiration at the emergence of yet another supreme heaven chosen. The experts from the Supreme D clan once again felt an incomparably intense impact. D sure was ranked number 11, yet the person ranked first was actually their mortal enemy, Qin Wentian. That Qin Wentian who killed Diyu. I really want to know how he defeated Gu Lufeng and the other heaven chosen to obtain the position of number 1. Sadly, I didn't have the chance to witness it personally. Maybe this would become the regret of my life. I'm truly envious of those who entered the immortal martial realm and were able to witness the rise of a legendary character. Someone sighed. Regardless of the doubts they had towards Qin Wentian before this, when the top ranker of the immortal martial realm inscribed those 3 words, everything was already settled. The immortal martial realm would never lie. Although the combat prowess of the top ranker might not be the strongest, there was no need to doubt their potential. Since Qin Wentian was ranked first, it meant that at the current stage of the immortal martial realm, his potential had already surpassed the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. The ranking monument of the immortal martial realm had existed for tens of millions of years, causing everyone in the royal sacred region to believe in it. This list was the real authoritative list. No matter how much you doubted Qin Wentian, everything would be over when his name was engraved on it. Qin Wentian. The experts of the Qinghua Mountains stood together. One of them stared at the 3 words as he felt an indescribable feeling in his heart. Back then in Xianqing City, he had a chance to fight for Qin Wentian to become a disciple of the Qinghua Mountain. However, he had missed it. Why does this name sound so familiar? In the direction of the Sea Clan, an expert spoke in a low voice. Behind him, a middle-aged man abruptly turned his gaze onto the young man beside him as a resplendent light flickered in his eyes. Si Qiong, is this the top ranker of the Heavenly Fate rankings who suppressed you? I remember you saying that in the future, you would definitely kill him to cleanse your humiliation, right? Si Qiong's body trembled as his face turned red. His current cultivation base was at the peak of the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper, and he was about to step into the 5th level. He had once participated in the Heavenly Fate rankings of Grand Xia, and he had originally planned to enter the immortal martial realm 10 years later, hoping that his name would be listed on the ranking monument of the immortal martial realm. But now, the young man who once defeated him in the Heavenly Fate rankings was already ranked at the top of the ranking list. This caused Si Qiong to feel so ashamed that he had no place to show his face. Withdraw all the members of the Sea Clan from Grand Xia. Don't have any connection with Grand Xia, and let go of all the grudges of the past. The middle-aged man faintly spoke. Back then, their Sea Clan suffered a loss in Grand Xia and Si Qiong was already preparing to make a comeback, blasting apart the royal tomb of Grand Xia. But now they had no choice but to give up on this plan. Their Sea Clan didn't want to offend a heaven chosen with limitless potential. Right now, as long as Qin Wentian nodded his head, he would be able to directly enter the royal sacred sect and become a core disciple. This was the weight of the ranking monument of the immortal martial realm. Any name on the ranking monument didn't need to participate in the recruitment test of the royal sacred sect, and could be directly sent into the royal sacred sect. Not only that, Qin Wentian was a disciple of the Battle Sword sect. One could very well imagine his status in the Battle Sword sect. At this moment, there were many disciples of the Battle Sword sect in this vast area. They were all cheering because the Battle Sword sect alone occupied 3 of the top 10 rankings of the immortal martial realm. The 9 great sects, 7 great clans, 2 empires, as well as the various aristocratic clans and sects were all contending for the top 10 rankings. From this, one could very well imagine the weight of the Battle Sword sect. Not only that, the name at the top was also a disciple of the Battle Sword sect. However, there was one person from the Battle Sword sect whose emotions were incomparably complicated. This person was none other than the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. Her gaze was fixated on the ranking monument before her. Even with her state of heart, she actually found it hard to calm down. How many years has it been since she last felt such intense waves of emotions? She didn't even know how to describe her current emotions. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness remembered that the first time she came into contact with Qin Wentian, she didn't even show her face. It was only when Qin Wentian comprehended the 14 sword strikes that she asked Qin Wentian if he was willing to take her as his master. At that time, Qin Wentian rejected her, and she said that Qin Wentian didn't know the immensity of the heavens and earth. The second time she came into contact with him, her impression of him was even deeper. After he became the foster son of Yi Qingyun, he actually dared to threaten her in the royal palace of Yi. At that time, she was high up in the air, looking down at Qin Wentian with disdain. She only felt how insignificant he was. Yet he dared to speak such arrogant words to her, disrespecting his elders. She once said that in the immortal martial realm, she would get Lu Bingyu to teach him a lesson. But now, she didn't know if her disciple Lu Bingyu had clashed head-on with Qin Wentian before. But at the very least, her disciple, Lu Bingyu, who she had high hopes for, was only ranked number 9 in the immortal martial realm, while Qin Wentian was ranked number 1. At this moment, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness suddenly recalled the scene back then in the royal palace of Yi. At that time, Qin Wentian stared at her in the air, his eyes gleaming with sharpness, without the slightest bit of concealment. She couldn't help but admit that Qin Wentian had already done it. He had taught her a lesson. It had been a very long time since a junior had caused such intense waves to rise in her heart. Although Ji Feishue was one of the era-suppressing geniuses, this had never happened before. At this moment, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness discovered many gazes landing on her. Behind her, there were many people whispering to each other. I heard that Qin Wentian is the foster son of the human emperor of Yi. Back then in the royal palace of Yi, experts from the Violet Thunder sect, War Country, Spirit Luan Country, and Li Clan all forced the human emperor to dig out the treasures in his body. The human emperor Yi Qingyun fought a great battle in all directions, looking down on the heavens and earth with disdain. Even a supremacy from the Violet Thunder sect was injured. After that, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness personally appeared and faced the besieged Yi Qingyun, forcing him to dig out the treasures in his body. Her actions were extremely cruel. At that time, although Qin Wentian was a disciple of the Battle Sword sect, a junior of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness, he still stood up for justice and stood against the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. Now that Qin Wentian obtained the position of number 1, the entire Battle Sword sect is celebrating, but the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness shouldn't feel good in her heart. In the past it was still fine. But now, these matters will definitely be dug out. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness has truly lost all her face. However, the happiest person this time around should be none other than the Holy Maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, Mo Qingqing. Back then when Qin Wentian killed Yi Kongfan in the royal palace of Yi, defeating the strong despite being the weak. How arrogant was he? Yi Kongfan was in love with Mo Qingqing, yet he couldn't obtain her. Hence he started rumors and slandered Qin Wentian, enraging him. At that time, I already knew that Qin Wentian would definitely become a character in the future. You don't even need to talk nonsense. Being able to jump 2 levels to kill Yi Kongfan, and even daring to go against the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. Everyone knows that Qin Wentian would definitely become a Heaven's Chosen in the future. Someone laughed, completely forgetting the shock they felt when Qin Wentian's name was mentioned. Qin Wentian has such talent, and the Holy Maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley is a 5th-ranked alchemist. Not only that, she is also the number 1 beauty in the Royal Sacred Region. They are truly a match made in heaven. I heard that they were childhood sweethearts, and were even betrothed before they were born. When did the Holy Maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley become the number 1 beauty in the Royal Sacred Region? Are you stupid? The beauty of the Holy Maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley has always been flawless. How could she be inferior to Lin Xian? In the past, it was only because very few people knew of her. Now that she has appeared, not only is her beauty renowned throughout the world, she is also going to become the wife of the number 1 genius in the immortal martial realm, Qin Wentian. With such a celestial couple, wouldn't it be only a matter of time before the Holy Maiden becomes the number 1 beauty in the Royal Sacred Region? In the crowd, similar voices rang out. In the past, Qin Wentian, who was looked down upon by many, suddenly became the mandate of heaven. Everything was within their expectations. As for the rumors of Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing's relationship, it was also being circulated to a godly level, with many versions appearing. Even before Qin Wentian stepped out of the immortal martial realm, there were already so many legends about him in the royal sacred region. Mo Qingqing was an indispensable part of the legend. At this moment, her beautiful countenance was filled with excitement. Staring at the three dazzling words, her eyes turned slightly red. It was as though she wanted to say something, but she discovered that Qin Wentian hadn't appeared yet. She didn't know who she should confide in. The maidens of the Medicine Sovereign Valley behind her were also shocked speechless. They still remembered the first time they met Qin Wentian. The holy maiden had leapt into his embrace, crying her heart out. At that time, they were extremely unhappy in their hearts. And this unhappiness only intensified when Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing were alone in the same room. They all felt that Qin Wentian wasn't worthy of Mo Qingqing. But now they couldn't help but to sigh at the fickleness of the world. Maybe this pair of lovers were already destined to be the center of attention, to be worshipped by the masses. Number 1. The Medicine Sovereign's beard fluttered in the wind, as a meaningful smile appeared on his face. This must be the fellow you like, right? Mo Qingqing nodded heavily. She turned her gaze onto the Medicine Sovereign, only to see that Mo Qingqing's eyes were red. Such a gaze caused the Medicine Sovereign's heart to involuntarily tremble. He gently tousled her hair as he spoke in a doting tone. Silly lass. Master would surely like him, right? Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flashed with an intense obsession. As she spoke, she couldn't control her tears any longer, as they flowed down her beautiful face. Daring to make my treasured disciple cry. How can I possibly like him? The Medicine Sovereign glared at her, his words causing Mo Qingqing to giggle. Although her eyes were filled with tears, her smile was still as moving as ever, causing the Medicine Sovereign to involuntarily sigh in his heart. How deep was the love of this silly lass? The old man beside the Medicine Sovereign didn't say anything. His gaze was fixed on the name on the monument, and in his eyes that seemed to be able to see through the vicissitudes of life, there were actually traces of tears flashing past, so bright and resplendent. Chapter 600. Within the boundary monument of the immortal martial realm, the 70-plus geniuses could clearly see the reactions of the spectators. Especially at the instant when the three words Qin Wentian were inscribed at the top of the monument, a huge wave of commotion rocked the outside world. Countless people were so shocked that they were numb. Disher saw the disappointment of the elders of his clan. Lu Bingyu saw the complicated expression on the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness face. Si Ling saw the joy on the faces of the experts from the Violet Thunder Sect and Si Clan. Qin Wentian saw Mo Qingqing's tears. Staring at that flawlessly beautiful countenance that couldn't stop her tears, traces of warmth flowed through Qin Wentian's heart. Her nervousness, her agitation, her happiness, all of these were imprinted into the depths of Qin Wentian's heart, causing him to remember this beautiful maiden whom he had fallen in love with back in Chu. At that time, she was the #1 beauty in Chu, while he was still a nameless nobody. Now she was the holy maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, a 5th-ranked alchemist, while he was a disciple of the Battle Sword Sect, the foster son of the Human Emperor, and the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. They were both working hard. Fate allowed them to meet. Since that's the case, he would grab hold of fate, not allowing that flawlessly beautiful maiden to disappear from his life. Lin Xian'er and Lu Bingyu also noticed Mo Qingqing's tears. Lin Xian'er's eyes curled up in a radiant and gentle smile as she silently glanced at the young man beside her. You have to treat the holy maiden well. Qin Wentian smiled and nodded at Lin Xian'er. Cheers. When are you preparing to marry the holy maiden? Lin Xian'er raised her cup, and Qin Wentian clinked his cup with hers. He didn't care about the intense alcohol burning his body as he gulped it down in a single gulp. Lin Xian'er saw the look of contemplation in Qin Wentian's eyes. She couldn't help but to blink as she snorted. Don't tell me you've never thought about it before? Qin Wentian nodded his head in guilt as he sighed. Along the way, I've experienced too many things. I didn't even have the time to stop. I truly owe her too much. It's not too late for you to think about it now. Even if you don't marry a woman like the Saintess, there will be plenty of suitors. Lin Xian'er giggled, her watery eyes were as soul-stirring as ever. A faint fragrance emanated from her, causing one to be intoxicated. Qin Wentian stared at that pair of gentle eyes, feeling as though he was unable to see through them. Yes. Qin Wentian heavily nodded his head. He was thinking that maybe it wouldn't be long before he returned to Grand Xia. At that time, he would return to Chu, and if Qingqing was willing, they could get married in his hometown Chu. In that case, Qingqing would definitely be extremely happy. His foster father, Sis Qin Yao, and teacher Mustang would also be extremely happy. I really miss everyone. I wonder how my adoptive father and the others are doing. Junior brother Qin, I'm really envious. To have a woman like the saintess deeply in love with you. If you get married, you must definitely invite all of us to the wedding banquet. Ji Feishue raised his wine cup to Qin Wentian and smiled. His gaze inadvertently glanced at Lu Bingyu, who was beside Qin Wentian. He only saw her lowering her head, her long black hair casually draped over her shoulders. However, he couldn't see the coldness in her eyes. Definitely. At that time, senior brother Ji, senior brother Duan Han, and Bingyu. All of you have to come. Qin Wentian laughed as he drank another cup of wine, appearing extremely happy. Lu Bingyu inclined her head, her cold eyes staring at Qin Wentian in bewilderment. Coincidentally, Qin Wentian was also looking at her. That handsome face of his had a hint of warmth in it. A radiant smile could be seen in his clear eyes. The him at this moment didn't have the slightest hint of arrogance or devilishness. He was like a ray of sunlight. Regardless of whether it was his eyes or countenance, they were both extremely good-looking and extremely comfortable to look at. What's wrong? Qin Wentian asked in a low voice upon seeing Lu Bingyu staring at him in a daze. Nothing. A strange expression flashed on Lu Bingyu's face. After which, she hurriedly averted her gaze and lowered her head again, not saying anything. Fine wine and delicacies accompanied by beautiful women. How joyous is that? Ji Feishue laughed. Everyone continued to enjoy the delicacies here as their bodies underwent a transformation. Occasionally, they would turn their gazes outside the World Monument. Although the rankings were already out, there were very few who left. It was as though they were still waiting for these people to exit. As for the topic of the rankings in the immortal martial realm, it was still fermenting. The rumors about Qin Wentian also grew more and more numerous. All of this, Qin Wentian had no idea. He didn't have much interest in it either. Other than eating and drinking, he would only stare at that beautiful silhouette outside as a gentle smile appeared on his face. Although they were separated by the World Monument, she was still by his side, looking at him, waiting for him. During these few days, Qin Wentian could feel his strength improving bit by bit. There were many geniuses here who were drunk and sober, and then drunk again. What made Qin Wentian somewhat surprised was that for a girl like Lu Bingyu, she didn't even bother to restrain herself and allowed herself to be drunk. Ji Feishue would usually stand by her side, watching over her, not allowing others to take advantage of her. Such a small interlude caused a smile to appear on Qin Wentian's face. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness taught her disciple, Lu Bingyu, hoping that she would surpass Ji Feishue. Most probably, Lu Bingyu had always treated Ji Feishue as her goal. Although Ji Feishue, the disciple of Sword Sovereign Ling Tian, was a potential competitor, he was also Lu Bingyu's idol. Hence, she would definitely pay more attention to Ji Feishue compared to others. For a girl as outstanding as Lu Bingyu, who was also young and beautiful, although Ji Feishue was one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, it was inevitable that he would fall in love with her. The two of them are truly compatible. At this moment, Qin Wentian sat in front of a stone wall. He turned his head back and stared at the glow of the World Monument as he mumbled, "Is that so?" Lin Xian'er, who was beside Qin Wentian, smiled. Her red lips curled up in a mysterious smile. "Maybe not necessarily. Can you see the runes on the stone wall?" Qin Wentian asked Lin Xian'er. Lin Xian'er shook her head as a strange light flashed in her eyes. "You can see them?" At the beginning I couldn't see them. But after that, I felt that they were somewhat blurry. But now, I can already see them more clearly. Qin Wentian nodded. his words causing a bright light to flash past Lin Xian'er's eyes. She stared at Qin Wentian. I really have no idea where did a demon-level genius like you come from. But what you saw shouldn't be wrong. I also feel that there's something extraordinary about this world monument. The Realm Lord set up a banquet to entertain us, and this banquet is able to improve our cultivation, as well as enhance our perception. Most probably, it's all for the sake of building a foundation for the stone wall. What did you see? Lin Xian'er curiously asked. It's too profound, I still can't understand it now. Qin Wentian's lips curled up in a smile, causing Lin Xian'er to glare at him. However, she didn't know how attractive she was when she revealed such a coquettish expression. However, I should be able to give it a try. Qin Wentian sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes, directly entering a meditative state. His actions caused the beautiful eyes of Lin Xian'er, who was beside him, to flicker. This fellow was truly ruthless enough. Could it be that she had no charm at all? As she thought of this, Lin Xian'er walked over and sat beside Qin Wentian, as though she was playing a prank on Qin Wentian. Her beautiful face leaned against Qin Wentian's, and it was as though she could feel his breathing. "Oh right." At this moment, Qin Wentian suddenly spoke, after which he opened his eyes, causing Lin Xian'er to jump in fright. She hurriedly retreated as her face flushed red. Her heart pounded rapidly, yet she only saw that Qin Wentian's countenance didn't change at all. He smiled at her. "Xian'er, help me prepare some good wine and delicacies for me. I might need them at any time." After speaking, a radiant smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face as he closed his eyes once more. This caused Lin Xian'er to be completely dazed. Why did she feel as though she was being teased? Consider yourself ruthless. Lin Xian'er was speechless. There was actually someone who ordered her to do things. How detestable. However, she still walked over and placed the delicacies beside Qin Wentian, causing the gazes of many heaven-chosen to land on her. They were all filled with envy for Qin Wentian, and these gazes caused Lin Xian'er to feel somewhat embarrassed. In the blink of an eye, 5 days passed. Within the boundary steel, the gazes of everyone landed on Qin Wentian. He was still sitting cross-legged as resplendent astral light radiated from him. On the stone walls of the boundary steel, resplendent astral light could be seen flashing about unceasingly, cascading onto Qin Wentian. These astral lights were like dancing runes. This world monument actually has such a miraculous effect? Expressions of shock appeared on the faces of the spectators. Nobody knew what had happened to Qin Wentian. Only the Realm Lord of the immortal martial realm, Wu Mu, had a smile on his face. Being the top ranker of the immortal martial realm truly wasn't luck. The vast astral light grew stronger and stronger, converging on Qin Wentian's body. Within Qin Wentian's body, his Yuanfu rumbled, his astral novas hummed, his arterial pathways rumbled, and the constellations in his body transformed into raging seas. Qin Wentian was like a bottomless pit, allowing the towering astral light to enter his body. In the short span of a day, Qin Wentian's body emitted an intense rumbling sound as a surge of aura gushed forth. Qin Wentian's aura actually underwent a transformation. His 4 astral novas floated above his head, growing even more resplendent and resplendent. He broke through in a single day. The hearts of the spectators pounded violently. Qin Wentian's cultivation base had already broken through to the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. They remembered that before he entered the immortal martial realm, he was still at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. Now, not only did he obtain the top ranker of the immortal martial realm, he even obtained many powerful innate techniques and cultivation arts. Not only that, his cultivation base had also broken through to the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. Everyone understood that in terms of combat prowess, Qin Wentian's true combat prowess had already surpassed the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. At this moment, Qin Wentian felt as though he was sitting in the middle of a boundless starry sky. The constellations in the heavens and earth were like a plate, and he was bathed in boundless astral light. Runic light shone resplendently, and the boundless astral light was drawn into his body, yet he couldn't absorb it at all. As though he had thought of something, Qin Wentian's will invaded the tiny astral being in his sea of consciousness. His will unceasingly invaded the depths of the tiny astral being, bringing along boundless astral light with it. This was the internal space of the tiny astral being. Qin Wentian roamed for a very long time before he finally came to the front of some gigantic astral fragments. These astral fragments were the ones he discovered in the deeper layers of space, and they were much more complete compared to the shallower layers of space. In the past, he had no way to unlock the memories contained within, but now he should be able to try. Maybe, the astral fragments here contain the memories of his father in the deeper layers of space. Boundless astral light gushed in, gushing towards one of the gigantic astral fragments. The astral fragments grew more and more resplendent, and as the boundless astral energy seeped into it, it finally shattered. A fragment of memory gushed into Qin Wentian's mind. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.